There we go. Okay.
Good morning.
So there is, good morning. Good morning. So there is a class that's called Business Planning Clinic, and you may have gone through part of this. Some of you guys that were here before probably the end of November, December, we had a couple of people that did business planning clinics that were online. So this is going to be recapping some of that, and of course going through a number of the other items. So the intention of this entire week is for you to have the basics for, not the basics, I take that back. Having the big picture of being a real estate agent. And then of course we have what's called Ignite. For if you've missed anything with Ignite, Ignite is the how to do it. This is going to be a little bit of a blend. It's almost like filling in the pieces. That's probably the better way to do it. There's definitely, you have this big puzzle, and between these two classes, the intention is that you kind of get all of it, not just the big picture of how to be a real estate agent. It's also, how do you do that task? How is it that you have your contract written up? How do you submit your contract to the other agent? So again, you're sometimes going to have classes that are, okay, here is the big picture. Here are your 5 things that you're going to need to do. And then there's also going to be the ones that here is how you do that step. And we're going to spend 15 minutes on explaining how you do that step. So it's a little bit of both of these classes can put together will really help you when it comes to that. So we're going to go over the business planning part. And those of you that are here have an actual, oh, okay, I see it now. I just saw the paper. I saw the other paper. I wasn't sure. So you got this? I think you guys have that. Perfect. So the business planning clinic is going to be, we are going to go over what are your big plans for 2021. Ooh, I didn't mess it up yet. And also the down and dirty as far as if you want to make $100,000, if you want to make $500,000, what can we do today? What can we do in January that will allow you to have March, February, March, April, all of the tasks that you're going to be doing, and how your accountability can be to make $25,000 in a month or $5,000 in a month, whatever it is that you're looking to do. So we're just going to kind of go over a lot of that. One thing that we always want to remind everybody is there is a do not call a law that you must abide by. So if you're using, and I have expires and for sale by owner lists that have information on a for sale by owner, it'll have their address, it'll have their name, and it may or may not have phone numbers that you could actually get in touch with them. If you are using that, as far as phone numbers, there are do not call laws, and make sure that you do not call someone that has the DND next to a phone number. Can't do that. So that's my disclaimer to make sure nobody gets in trouble. And the fines are pretty hefty. So just be careful of that. Let's go over a few things. So many of you, and I know most of you, or well, I know those of you in this room, and I know those of you that are on the call, for the most part, if you have transactions that are in the works right now, that's great. Think about how much your commission will be today if those close in the next 30 days. So those of you that do have contracts that are in the books, or if you have listings that are on line right now, if you were to have a closing in the next 30 days, how much would you end up making? So if you have 2, great. If you have 4, great. If you don't have any, then it would be a 0, right? We don't like the zeros. You're not doing this just to make 0. That's not going to help anybody. So if you don't have anything, we're going to work out what are the tasks and what are the things that you're looking to do to make the amount that you want to make in the next 30 days and more so in the next 60 days. We typically have closings about 30 days after you put in a contract. So that's what we're going to, those are the kind of things that we're going to look at. So let's go over what some of the basics are. And you can kind of think of this for yourself. As far as our area, many of you have heard me probably say this. What's basically the average commission in our general area? What would that be? 3%. And what's our dollar amount for average for this general area? 300 to 350? You said 300, you said 350? Yeah. And that's about right. Actually, this office, which we're right smack in the middle of Lakewood Ranch is a little higher than 350 as an average. But overall, this office, we tend to be about, I think that last year we're at 342, I think is our average. So if you were to assume even 325 as an average or 300, then you're looking at a commission check of $9,000, right? That's the gross. That's not after splits and all that, but that's your $9,000 for a commission. Okay, so keep that in mind whenever we're doing any of these math things. So as far as today, again, we're going to go over and work out what are we going to be doing in the next year to make the amount of money that we want to make. So if you were to imagine, and if you want to share it, that's great. If you want to just write it down, that's okay too. Think of what you would think the next 12 months would be a great amount of money to make as a real estate agent. So kind of take a note of that. And then we'll go through how can you actually make that happen. So as a learning example, I once had somebody that walked through the doors that his goal was that he wanted to make net $2 million in his first year of real estate. Now, I think he had watched a lot of the certain shows that gave him this impression that he was just going to go out there and sell like 30 houses. It's going to be super easy, and every commission check was going to be like, I don't know, $300,000 every commission check. So we talked about that a little bit more, and it changed slightly. And yet, if you did come in and for really just for giggles, I think for the most part, in some ways, after a conversation with them, we actually did work it out. I was like, there is a mathematical way to do this. You can kind of figure it out. There's staff, so it's whether it's people or money are going to make those things happen. That's really what you have to do.
So what did you do? Did you go up to Longboat or something?
Well, this was when I was in Boca Raton,
Okay.
but basically it was beachfront properties. And he had some ideas about being a real estate agent that were very different than what the reality is. So kind of like when my husband sees something and he's like, why aren't you have a $500,000 commission? I was like, we don't sell $80 million houses.
Yeah, but I watched those shows and they have like expenses on open houses and stuff,
Yeah.
like $70,000-$80,000.
They're also not getting 3%
Yeah, like
on
they're
most of
looking
them.
for brokerages. They don't have their own options.
And they're also not making 3% most of the time.
Plus, they want TV has them to get clients.
And again, they're not getting 3%. It says 3% on the little thing. It's not 3%. Okay, so thank you guys for sharing. We have Brad's looking at like 200,000. We have agents that make 200,000 in the first 12 months of being in real estate. Or if you wanted to do that in 2021, you could do that. So I'm not here to say that the $2 million isn't realistic. There's just either going to be time or money that you have to put into it. So I don't really care what not, well, okay, that's not right. I do care about any number that you give me. It's just a matter of what do we do to make that all happen? And that's what we're going to work out today. So at least you know it. Now I am very aware. I have, some family things that I want to be a part of. And so my work-life balance, my goal may not be what it was when I was in my 20s. It might be slightly different, and I'm okay with that. So all of those things just have to work out. And that's how we really are going to work it out so that you do know, with my lifestyle, I want to put in about 30 hours a week. Okay, we're going to work that out. And that's what I really want you to understand. And I also want you to be purposeful with your time. It is super easy for us to sit around or go to events and do things that are real estate related that aren't necessarily purposeful and don't necessarily bring us income. As much as I love you guys to come to classes and I want you to come to classes, it's not about coming to a class every day and only coming to class. You've got to go out and do some of the things too. And I could be, if somebody would pay me a lot of money to do that, I would love just to learn all day. wish I felt that way when I was in college, because I didn't. I enjoyed it, but not quite as much as I do now. All right. So those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about today. So I want us to really understand, why are we doing this? So if anybody can either put in the chat or speak up, there's not too many people for us to be able to manage this. Why did we choose real estate? There are other jobs that are out there. There are other things that we can do that would earn us a living to pay our bills. We're here in a real estate world. Why real estate? And just to clarify a little bit, I want the big reason, and I'll give you what mine was when I started real estate. So some of you may or may not know this. When I say my son, that's my nephew that I raised. My sister passed away when he was 7 years old. So that was a long time ago. That was in 2000 that I became his parent. My goal when I was in real estate, when they asked me that question, because honestly, I had just corporate jobs for a long time, and I did well, and I didn't think anything bigger. And when they asked me that question, I was like, well, I just want to make sure that he can go to whatever school he needs to go to. Really smart kid. And it was just like any school. I don't really care. I just don't want it to be that I can't afford for him to go to whatever college he needs to go to so he has a great future. And that was it. Every day I woke up. He went to school, made really good grades. I went to work and did well enough that I could support him. That was it. There was nothing else that really mattered. So I figured it would all work. If I could afford school, food wouldn't be a problem. If I could afford his school, shelter wouldn't be a problem. It was all about the school. So I want you to kind of understand that. And I don't want my goal to be your goal. If education, if that's what it is, that's great. I'm at a different point in my life, and it's more towards, what does our retirement look like? We're good as far as the kids. What does my future look like then? So think about that type of thing. That's what drove me every single morning. This person needs to have a great future. So I was working for that. I wasn't working for me. I was working for that. So think for just a minute of, even if you have, maybe it's a little bit of combination, what is the reason that we chose real estate? I swear, I just start coughing because I'm talking. I'm going to give you guys just a moment to do that. Okay. Is there anyone that wants to share? I shared. And okay, Juliana is sharing with us. Oh, I could either.
I chose it because I always love homes. I mean, generally, I love designing, decorating, looking at homes. I had a cleaning company, so I looked at so many homes all over Sarasota and Bradenton, and it was So I really enjoyed it. I even designed my home in Canada.
Mhm.
And and I never worked for somebody else since I was 21 years old. It was always me for myself. So I decided, okay, why not sell them and work for myself at the same time? So that was kind of, and of course, the income potential is that if I work a lot, because I have to admit it, I'm not really consistent. Some days I can work 12 hours, other days I feel like working 4. So I'm not that person who wakes up at 5 and I have a strict schedule.
I think that's the
don't-
definition of a real estate agent,
Yeah.
not being consistent.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was really
And
fun.
fair, and fair. We appreciate you sharing that. And if all of those things are working, what does the financial things that happen as a real estate agent, if you do well, what does that allow you to do? Be your own boss?
Oh, yeah, I
Have
love
your
that.
own
Yeah, I like financial security. But
financial
what
security?
happens is that, I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Robbins'
Mhm.
6 human needs.
Mhm.
The thing is that for me is predictability, or I don't know what's the word he uses when you know what's going to happen. That's important, which is kind of like shaky because in this business you never know what's going to happen. Like
There's some predictability. We're going to go over to make it
yeah.
more predictable. Mhm.
Because I find it like one day I didn't have a client, the next day I had a client. It's like, okay, you change in 24 hours.
Yes, at the beginning that does happen.
That's
That
fun
this is
and that's stressful at the same time.
so. If you guys didn't hear what she's saying, it's in many ways it's unpredictable, which is true. You could physically, or you could really get a phone call from someone that you did not have 5 minutes before that wants to buy a house that you could get a commission check of $9,000 30 days later. There's not a lot of businesses that do that. However, I challenge you to think of when you're doing the things you're supposed to do, that starts to happen more and more. And so that almost becomes a predictability that you're going to have the surprise client once a month, once every other month, depending on the things that you're doing. So think bigger, think bigger than that. So I did hear there's financial security. There was a lot.
And I enjoy it, really.
There's a lot.
love it.
Okay.
I love it.
We want to enjoy because there are other things that we could do.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a theme that I heard. Is that probably a lot of it? Okay. And you're the you're the driver of what that is. It's not Keller Williams, it's you. Okay. Anyone else want to add or change, or I have a chat? Let's see. Freedom in my schedule, help others with their dreams and to be successful. Okay. Create family business, successful family business. Okay. And what happens if you have a successful business? What does successful mean?
You're surrounded with people that are successful themselves. I think real estate helps you with that, especially because you meet so many people, and those are your relationships that you can build on for a future relationship or a future sale.
Future business.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah, period. Okay. So it's a business that allows you to be around a lot of other people, that you can build a network of successful people. You can build a network of not successful people too, depending on where you hang out and what you're doing. Okay, good. Yeah. And we are, sometimes I know that there are books as well as philosophies that are around that. You're one person away from whatever your goal is. I mean, in so many ways. So thank you guys for sharing all that. So there is successful. When I shared with you what mine was one big goal. So I encourage you to think of that one that drives you every day. Because with my example, and I'm using my example because I was trained on that one thing, because I really did. I didn't want to look in the mirror when I was brushing my teeth and say, his school isn't that important. His future isn't that important. His going to a great college isn't that important. That allowed me to, did I really want to be in my PJs all day as a real estate agent? Yeah, because sometimes we can do that. But if I did that, I was saying no to the other thing. And that's what we talk about, that big why. It's bigger than yourself, because that wasn't about me necessarily. It was more about him. And if he was taken care of, then of course I wasn't going to be, again, worrying about food, shelter, clothing. I mean, if I was doing that well, then we would be okay. And we were, and it was sketchy, by the way. Ate beans and rice as a single parent a lot, definitely. Because I decided to start my real estate business in 2008. Yay, financial crisis. So that was fun.
Did you all have foreclosures at that time?
It was, we did. I learned in a foreclosure world. Yeah, that's how I learned to do business, is foreclosure and short sales. I did more short sales than I did foreclosures. Yeah. So think of that big thing, because we all say successful. I've had people say that successful to them means $45,000 a year. I've had successful people that say $4 million is what I need to be successful. The number is not important to me. It's what's important to you and what it allows you to do. So be really clear on, oh, I'm sorry, really clear on that part so that you have that. I want you to, if this works for you, if it doesn't work for you, then I find another way. But I'm telling you, I brush my teeth every single morning. And that's what I thought of. It's like, if I chose not to do what I'm supposed to do today, I'm saying no to him going to a good school.
In the coaching world, they say that if your why is big enough, it will pull you through whatever.
It'll pull you through everything.
whatever type of
Yeah.
thing when you're done.
Headache didn't really matter. Tired didn't really matter. And I had days where I stayed in my PJs. I am not here to say that every day was perfect. I want you to just be real with yourself with that and find something that drives you. And hopefully real estate is part of that, because we like you guys. All right, make sure that I'm good with everybody. Okay. All right, so that's what I want you to get clear on with your why, and whether or not you have it clear today. I'm not necessarily worried about the today. I just want you to get clear on that pretty soon. And it's probably something that's either in your mind now and you're just not wanting to share anything more, and that's okay. But I want you to know what it is for you. Yeah. Okay. So there are going to be some goals that we're going to have to get used to putting together. And there is that, like it's on the sheet, there's the Sunday goal, the 5-year, the 1 year, the monthly, the weekly, the daily, and even the right now. So is there anything that you could think of that would be a great thing as newer? I believe that everybody on here is newer as a real estate agent. What would be awesome if it happened today as a real estate agent? Throw something out there. Discussion. Got a contract. Somebody calls and wants to buy a house. That does happen once in a while.
It happened to me. But, you know,
It did.
Yeah, it did.
It did. Yours are kind of an interesting world. Juliana has had some people, they've all reached out to you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Juliana has 2 contracts
Yeah.
that she's working on, and they all actually reached out to her.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? They call you. You're not calling them, they call you.
Not Instagram, they saw me and they just wrote to me, hey, you're gonna move down there.
On Instagram.
Instagram, next year they're gonna move, and they said, I'm gonna chat about it. I'm like, okay. I didn't even put ads or anything on Instagram. I don't know how they find me. I guess hashtags, but.
I don't, yeah, and start to make note of what's happening with that, and even ask them. It will happen. You will have probably someone that met you somewhere, saw you somewhere, saw something online, did something, and you're like, that's how you found me, or that's how you thought of me. I mean, in your mind, you're like, really? Like, I'm over here making calls. I'm over here doing open houses every weekend. And you friended me, or you saw a picture of a palm tree and then called me on Instagram. Like, those kind of things will happen. I mean, that particular instance may not happen to you, but there will be something unusual. Standing in line at the grocery store buying bananas, true story, not me, an agent, came back, listed a house the next day. I'm like, okay, people need to buy more bananas. All of these things do happen. And when you're doing the things you're supposed to do as a real estate agent consistently, you will find these random things that come in. Okay, so sell my listing, get an offer this afternoon, get offer on the afternoon showings. I would agree. And that can happen as well. So Good job, Brian. We'd love to have that because that can happen too. You could have those phone calls that end up being a piece of business. All right. So if we want that to happen today, what if we were to push that out a month from now? That I want to have that phone call, or I want to have a contract a month from now. Is there something that you can do today that can get you there 30 days from now? As real estate agents, most of you guys have been with us for a little bit of time. If there was something that you could do today, an activity, a lead generating activity, what's something that you could possibly do today that could bring a contract? You could make cold calls. Usually not the favorite thing of anybody. Even seasoned agents, the least favorite thing to do.
But I don't like that because you don't build rapport and you need time. And it's like,
Sometimes.
I find it with myself, if I talk to people normally, I know it's hard to trust and they like you, obviously that's normal. So it's like on a cold call, you have 2 minutes and you're just pushing your agenda or something.
You could. Well, tell me you want to be successful, right? So, so something that Juliana was saying is that, you know, you're not building rapport if you were to be doing cold calls. So you can build rapport sometimes. I mean, how many times have you had a person that you meet and it's like 2 minutes later, they act as if you're their best friend? That can happen.
React to a cold call like me in the minute that I hear somebody, hi, I'm whatever, I'm already in the defensive mode right away.
But that's you.
And then I think others are like that because they are sick of it.
Some are, some aren't. Make enough phone calls.
So I'm starting from a position that is already negative. So to pull it up to the good rapport.
You
it's
got-
not that,
Yeah, you got to, so we'll talk more about that. So I don't, that's one thing though. And I'll tell you, if you make enough phone calls, there's somebody in your world that you will call that needs to sell their house. Something's happened in their life that has made it to where they need to make that move. And you made that phone call. And in some ways they're like, yes, I need to actually do this. And you happen to call me and can you help me? I don't know another agent. So if you make enough phone calls, there probably is someone that it won't be like, oh, it'll be more of a,
So
it'll be more of a, yes, actually, I do need somebody to help me. How can you help me?
I have a question about you because there are, how many agents are in Sarasota and Bennington? Like
6,200, I'm saying.
So now you have that cold calling list. What is this? What is the number?
98% of them aren't doing anything.
So 98% of, okay, the 2% of that is still a high number to get
Mhm.
calls from. So
They're
I'm
probably
thinking-
getting 10, if it's a good listing, they might get 10 calls.
Yeah.
So we'll go over that part. I don't want to live just in the cold call thing. However, yeah, it's not our favorite thing to do. I don't like doing it. And I've been in the business for almost 14 years from the beginning. And no, I don't like making cold calls. However, if I were to make calls today, like let's say that's as if I was not in this position and I was making call and this is what I was going to do because I don't know anybody else and I want to have a listing. I'm only worried about the 2 people that'll like me. I'm only worried about the 2 people or 1 person that'll say yes, that I can help. If everybody else tells me, you know, being PG, like F you, I'm okay with that. I get a $9,000 check when I help that 1 person that needed help. And those other 99 people that I may have talked to, which you typically don't talk to 100 people in a day, but those other, I'm not really worried about them because I wanted my son to have a good future. It's like, you can tell me F you if you want to, but that's not going to stop me from making sure that my son goes to college. Do you see how I brought that back? Because I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about what is my reason for doing this. And also I care about the person that I'm going to work with to help them. So tell me whatever you want. You can tell, I lived in New Jersey. You can tell me whatever you want. You can, it's not going to really break my shell. I mean, I may.
Good for you. It's very
Yeah.
I'm still sensitive for that. I think I get.
Oh, I'm not saying I could curl up in the corner and cry at some moments. And sometimes it gets to me a little bit more. But the thing is, my son meant a whole lot more to me. And I'm going to say that over and over again, because that actually is what drove me. And I just want you to, whatever that is for you, your situation is going to be different than mine. Whatever that is, that needs to be the drive. That needs to be the drive. That's why we do talk about that. So we have some other examples. New content, Facebook, making phone calls, expired listings, door knocking. Absolutely. So if you were to make enough phone calls today, and just because we know what the numbers are, your numbers are probably going to be about 2% are going to say yes to whatever it is that you're doing, asking for an appointment, seeing whether it's a listing or a buyer, that you end up with about 2 to 5% of them, if you were to make phone calls, will end up allowing you to sit with them and talk to them about a real estate transaction. Sometimes you're going to be at 5%, sometimes you're going to be at 2%. The thing is, when you do it, you get better and better. Door knocking. If you were to today, because 1 month from now, my monthly goal is that I'm going to have a transaction somehow, some way. So I'm going to do something today to get me closer to that goal. If you were to do door knocking, probably if you talk to about 30 people by door knocking, and door knocking is a little wonky now. I mean, it's not necessarily, you may not actually door knock. Maybe you walk your dog in the neighborhood. If you were to get to where you're having conversations with between 20 and 30 people, by the end of the month, and you're doing that at least 3 days a week, you probably would have 1 to 2 transactions from doing that. So that's something that you could do today, that 30 days from now, that you end up with a contract. You could do that. So now let's think a little bit bigger, and I'm just kind of like working through this, and I want you to have some ideas. Oh, and social media is one of those things that can definitely happen. We have Julia here that we just said, she has 2 people that she's working with. It was all from social media, wasn't it?
No, 2 were like, I never met them before, so 2 were like accidental meetings.
Okay, so one social media.
Through somebody, but one out of that was somebody saw something on Facebook and then they told them about it.
Okay, so it was a referral because you did something. So I would still count that social media.
The one who referred me, so it's like, I don't know.
But still, social media got you to that point.
And it was a regular post. There were no ads or anything. It was just something.
You don't know. We have no idea. So through social media, roundabout, but through social media, you have in the last 60 days, probably it started maybe a little bit more than a month ago.
It started in December, yeah.
Okay, so a month ago, through social media, you've picked up 1 client at least that you are physically working.
Well, actually, I have one who wants to buy in summer too. That's social media too.
Okay.
So I have
So 2 clients, but 1.
But not right away. With the one that's from Instagram, that's another one on social media, but that's like a 1-year cycle. So they're not ready or.
And that can happen. That can happen too. So that goes back to the things that I'm doing today are going to get me further along when it comes to a year from now. So if I wanted to in 30 days, we just went over a few examples, and there's probably 5 other things. Calling your sphere, the people that you know, asking them if they know anybody. That's one of the things that actually usually works out pretty well for you to end up having something in the next 30 days. So now, and many of you have written down a few minutes ago, what does it look like a year from now? What are my expectations as far as how much am I going to make? Whether it's the number of transactions or the dollar amount, either of those can work when you're doing your goals. What do I need to start to have happen on a monthly basis? Does that 1 transaction from the activities that I'm doing today, if I'm just not going to stop until I have an appointment booked, and that's what I'm going to do today. My big goal is I'm going to get an appointment somehow, some way today, that my hope is that I end up getting a transaction in the next 30 days. Well, what if I did that? What are my expectations in a year? So because Brad put it out there for the people to see, he said $200,000. So if it's $200,000, how many of those transactions do I need to have on the monthly basis? Let's do a little bit of math. So if we're at 300,000, Some of you have done this before, but if you're at 200,000 and you divide 9,000 by 200, that's a little bit more. You can't sell 0.2 of a house. So let's assume 23 houses in a year. That's the big number. That's the gross. That's not your net. And knowing Brad, that probably he's looking at 200 as his net. So if it's 200 as his net, then obviously you need to add more to that to pay taxes. And there are some expenses as being a real estate agent. But how does it sound to sell less than 2 houses a month? Okay, so we have, great, that's hard. Yes, of course, Brad, that was your net. I'm not surprised. Some days easy, some days hard.
Sometimes I feel like, oh my God, it's going great. And then like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Well, that tends to be business. Some days are good, some days are not. Well, if you're 5 days a week, so most of us want to work about 5 days. Is that about right? And as real estate agents, there will be times that we work 6 days. Maybe we'll have a lighter day one day, but we're going to need to do an open house on a Sunday, or we're going to need to show some houses on a day that we want to have the rest of the day to spend with our families or sit in your pajamas. I love pajama day. All of those things can actually happen. So if we need to have 2 transactions every month to get to 200,000, and whatever your number is, we just kind of talked about what the math is. And I get it. If that's something that's a little bit of a stretch, then okay, make some changes. However, if you're looking at that saying, okay, well, 2, that doesn't sound crazy. I want to work towards 3, then we're going to back some of that out as far as what are we going to do for that. So make sure that when you are setting your goals that you do have that big number and understand what that means in transactions too. As newer agents, you might end up selling a couple of houses that are like 100,000. That could easily happen because sometimes you're going to have somebody that is, it's easier for us to get clients that are at the lower price point. And that's, a lot of that is because you will have, somebody may reach out to you and many other agents don't return phone calls or don't want to help when it comes to something that's going to be such a small commission check. So as you are an agent for months and months, you might very well have a couple of people say, oh yeah, well, I want to look at condos that are $100,000. That might be some of the ones that you get. So just realize that you want to keep both of those things in perspective, not only the dollar amount and also the transaction. Because if you end up having a couple of transactions that are closer to 200,000, then you might need to have more than 22 houses, 24 houses in a year. Because the dollar amount is what's going to pay your bills. So just pay attention to that and make sure that you stay close to whatever your average price point should be. And if you're unsure what your average price point should be, if you can always use the office, which tends to fluctuate somewhere around the 325 to 350 range. You could also look at the house that you live in right now. And if you're renting, then it's just a matter of what does the surrounding area look like as far as your price point. And if it's 200,000, then that might be the first few houses that you sell. If you live in a neighborhood that's more like 500,000, then that's probably going to be closer to what you end up having as your average price point. It's who you surround yourself with. So we want to have both. And as markets change, and we're currently in a seller's market, that could change to be a buyer's market. It could end up just settling a little bit. As that happens, your price point could also fluctuate with that too. Because you're going to have houses that are selling, especially if you're in, let's say, the $500,000, $600,000 price range, that market will soften a little faster than the $300,000 price range. So you have to pay attention to what's happening in the world, because that's one of the first things that happened in 2008, 2007, that area, luxury market just stopped. The meat of the market took a little bit longer to start to feel it. Okay. So let's continue. We're going to use those conversations that we just had to work on what this all looks like. So if you have read the MREA book, open that minute. The MREA book, which is the Millionaire Real Estate book. You guys all know what that is. If someone does not know what that book is, let me know and we'll make sure that you, if you do not have a copy, we will get you one. Within that book, there are what we call models of how to do this business. And if you notice on the sheet in front of you, on the screen, we have those 5 models listed here. So I want to explain just a little bit about those. We're not spending a whole day on the economic model or any of these. We're not doing that. But I want you to truly understand how it is that you build your business plan and your goal setting surrounding by this. So we have the economic model, the lead generating model, the budget, organization, and the expansion. As newer agents, and I believe that everybody on the call is more of a newer agent, you're probably going to live in the lead generating model a lot. And of course, you still need to understand the economical and the budget model. As you grow your real estate business, you're going to spend a little bit of money, probably in your marketing, to grow your business faster than by just doing it without adding money to it. And that also doesn't mean that you could very well grow a great business and spending very, very little. I mentioned I was a single parent. I'll tell you, I was so cheap as a real estate agent. I did anything and everything I could do for free. And I did. Fortunately, I was fairly techie. I'm not as tech in comparison. I'm not as techie as I was then. People thought I was techie then. People don't think I'm as techie now. But I did a lot of things for free. And there are a lot of things for free. So just keep those things in mind, because you can either buy the business or you can work the business. Or ideally, you do both. So it's just a little bit, and be really careful about where you spend your money. So the economic model is the formula that describes the relations between a series of activities and the specific outcome. So how much money you spend is going to equal the business that you have, that outcome. Lead generating is where your money is a plan for where your money comes from your lead generating activities. It is, all right, I guess I should really wear my glasses. Companion to the economic model, because you can do them both. An easy example, most of you guys know social media ads, as well as lead generating, putting those two things together. An open house, and then advertising on social media, the open house, those two things, that's an example of what they're talking about there. The budget model is a plan for where your money goes between the time you receive it and keeping it for yourself. The focus is on minimizing your expenses to maximize your profit. So being very, very careful. Always keep in mind, if you have a certain dollar amount that you want to spend on your marketing, and it could be as simple as $20 a week on Facebook ads or something like that. If that's what you're living in, have it accountable for what you're expecting. Because it's very easy as a real estate agent, oh, I'll do this for $50. Oh, I'm going to do that for $10. I'm going to do that for $100. That can get really expensive. And so be super careful about all those little things that you definitely do. As you get further along in your business, there are the organizational model. That's the asking for help. So if you are doing 2 or 3 transactions in a month, you may want to get a transaction coordinator that you spend $200-300 on per transaction to help you with paperwork. That's not unrealistic. I know people that are not very good with paperwork and probably are looking at selling every month, maybe 1 house. And they just don't want to do paperwork. And so they're going to have a transaction coordinator. That's okay. But that's where you can start with your help. And then of course there's admin. We have a number of people that are part of teams in our office, and many of them, their first hire is some type of an assistant. And then of course there's expansion. Expansion, is there anybody here that has heard or talked to anybody about an expansion team? No? Anybody on that knows anything about expansion teams? A yes or no? Actually, no. No. Okay, so no. So expansion teams, some of you that are that are on may have heard. Have you heard of Ben Kenny? Anybody seen videos on with Ben Kenny? Oh, okay. Write that down. Ben Kenny. Watch his videos. He's one of the top Keller Williams people. He will probably be interviewed at Family Reunion or on Family, I guess because it's virtual, on Family Reunion. I don't know how to say that. He is one of my favorite people. You may or may not feel that way. He is one of the first people that started expansion teams. So he is an agent that started off in Washington State and he expanded to other areas. So he built his business and then decided, okay, I'm going to also have a team in, I'm going to say Arizona. I could be wrong, may have been like one of his first places. And he has several expansion teams throughout the country. There's still a Keller Williams Ben Kenny team. He lives in Washington, and there's one in, I don't know, Atlanta. And again, I don't know if it's in Atlanta. I'm sorry?
Austin is like that.
Austin does not have an expansion team.
He has teams in
He's in South Dakota, but that's the only, he doesn't have a team here. No.
So if you pick up another team here, then
It would start to look like expansion. Yeah, so when you expand outside of the one market, and that could still be in the same state, it could be just in the market. And most of them start off one place and then go to a neighboring market. So like here, it would possibly be Sarasota, expansion team in Tampa or Orlando. That's how most of the expansion teams work. I only bring that up. We're not going to dive in and spend a whole lot of time on expansion team. But I want you guys to understand that, remember the guy I talked about that was looking at $2 million net in his first year of real estate? He is, oh, Nicole was, I guess, looking at seeing who's on. If he wanted to do that, one of the faster ways with enough money would be to have several expansion teams.
What happened to him finally?
He's,
How much money did he make?
he's not, I do not know if he's in real estate, but he is not with Keller Williams, which was a good thing. Yeah,
Do you know
leave
how
it
much
like
he
that.
made in his first year?
Not $2 million. Very, very sweet, just very misguided in what he was looking at doing. So the point is that you could be building a business. We can be an agent, and then we can also be teams, and we can also be an agent that expands throughout not only the country, but in the world, as far as Keller Williams, because we have offices all over the world. So if you wanted to, if you were to say, I don't know, anybody, where are you moved to the United States, right?
Yeah, I'm from Brazil.
You're from Brazil. So would you want to retire in Brazil? Maybe.
I don't know.
Your family may not.
I think Florida is gonna be the
It's-
closest
okay.
I could get to Brazil. Hopefully, I don't
All
wanna
right.
go there again.
Well, it could be, I know that when I first started in this office, because I've only been in this office for, I think, close to 2 years now, there was an agent that they moved to Hawaii. They had a plan, and I believe that their plan was 5 years later that they wanted to move to Hawaii. And I don't know the background. I don't know them personally to know why Hawaii, but they had a 5-year plan of, again, I actually don't even know if it's a 5-year plan. Whatever the year was, they ended up making the move even faster, but they had that plan. And so if they wanted to, they could have had a team here. They could have started an expansion team in Hawaii and then retired over there. You could do all kinds of things. There's not a limit to how you want to build this. You could 5 years from now not want to show houses, build a business, and then have someone as a showing assistant, which is a job. Again, go back to the MREA book, the Millionaire Real Estate book, and you could have somebody going and showing houses for you, and you negotiate the contract. It's not agent only as an option. being in the real estate world. So here's the fun stuff. I do like numbers, so forgive me if I do kind of go into this a little bit more. Just from a top line perspective, going by the Millionaire Real Estate book, that's where we get a lot of this. And this has been adjusted. I think it was 2 years ago they made an adjustment because the Millionaire Real Estate book had it a little bit less or a little bit different. This is telling you what it could be for you to have an income that is a net of $1 million. So if I wanted to have a net of $1 million and I had half of my business as buyers and half of my business as sellers, this is telling me that I need to have 7 listings a week and 30 buy sides a week. 28 a month on the sales side and 30 a month on the buy side. Because remember, it costs you a little bit more in time for a buyer than it does for a listing. So all I need to do, and I say that maybe in jest, but I just need to sell 28 listings every month and have 30 buyers every month. And I would probably have cash in my bank that I could spend of $1 million. I mean, it's a big number, but if I wanted to do it, that can be how it's done. This is also saying that your average commission is $7,100. If you were selling that many houses, you probably would be a little bit higher. And remember, we cap at Keller Williams. So your split goes away after about the 6th sale. Sure, we have a question.
To have 350 units sold in a year, how many people do you have to have in your team? I mean, one person.
Depends on how you do it. We've had, so the question was for you guys on screen was how many people do you have to have on your team to sell 360 units in a year? It depends. We've had agents, if you have not met Heather or Brian, well, Brian is our operating principal in the office. You'll see him on training from time to time. And Heather, who is also with Keller Williams, but it's their boyfriend, girlfriend. She sold 100 where she just really had some admin support in a year, just her, which is probably a little bit more than most people would be able to do. And that was in Oklahoma City, by the way, which her average price point is not where she wasn't making $7,000 per transaction. It was less. So could you do 100? Most of the time, you're going to have either transaction coordinator or some type of an admin when you get around the 30 to 40 transactions in a year. But your first hire is always some kind of should be some kind of an admin support. So there is not an exact number. There's really not. But you could probably do it with 5, maybe less. So here are some of those lead generating activities, and we talked about some of them. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but we are going to talk a little bit about the difference between the marketing and prospecting. Prospecting tends to be either free or close to free. It may be gas to get somewhere. It may be printing of flyers or printing of something that you're handing out, but a lot of it is really the time. That's where your prospecting is. So that's going to be your circle prospecting, the walking the streets, making phone calls, different occupation. Being around people somehow, some way. You could also do a lot of this stuff online. There are a lot of teams and a lot of big agents that are doing a lot of things online. Community outreach. There's key relationships. So I do want to spend a moment on key relationships. And this is something that there is a person who was the chairman of the board called Mo Anderson. If you haven't heard her name, she's someone who's been with Keller Williams for a very, very long time. And she's the person that Gary Keller actually hired when he stepped away from being the leader of Keller Williams the first time. When he gave her the position to, you run the business because I'm not as good at running it. And she really did. So you'll hear and see different things by her. And I went to an event where she was a speaker for that event, and she talked about it, and others do too. However, this is how I explain it. Where Moe Anderson was telling us about, you need to have your core advocates. So I think you guys might have heard me say this before if you've taken some of the Ignite class. We need to have our core advocates, and I encourage you to get to the point that you have get to 20 core advocates as soon as possible. And these core advocates tend to be family and very, very close friends. But imagine the person who wants you to succeed. That's why I talk about like parents, aunts, uncles, it's like, oh yeah, you can do it. You want that person. Whoever is the person that's in your world, that is the one that is at an event or on the phone with their friend. And that friend says, I'm thinking about moving. And that friend, because they love you and want you to do well, say, you have to talk to Susie. You need those people. And every one of us has, or hopefully has, someone in our life. And hopefully you have a few people in your life. And then if you only have a handful today, have that as one of the goals as far as building your business, to where by the end of the year, you do have 20 people that are in your world, that they may not be the family and friends. They may be people that you are interacting with from business or things that you've done before. I know Leslie has military background. There's probably, because, some of the most loyal people in the world, they're gonna, you're in Sarasota, you need to talk to Leslie. You want those people. So we need to find whoever those people are and nurture those relationships. And sometimes if it's someone that's not family or friends, it's a little bit more of a business relationship in that, then you have to treat it like that business relationship. Have a business lunch with them, have coffee with them, make sure that you're talking to them. They have a business or they're doing something in their world. How can you help them? And then also you're going to reap the benefits of that and have them help you from time to time. It is a two-way street though. You've got to have something in their world that helps them, whether it's personally or business, to where they are then another person that's a core advocate. So as an example, I had an agent when I was in the Boca Raton area, and she had her core advocates were from the dog park in her community. So she would go there basically every day, because that's what you do with your dogs, went to the dog park every day, and she would have conversations with usually 3 to 5 people every single day. And when she did that, she was building relationships with them. And also she knew which each person did. So whether it was somebody that was an accountant or did something, she made sure that anytime she knew of somebody that needed that service, that she would refer them. And in turn, they would refer her. She built her business on, there were about, it was less than 10. So I'm going to say about 7 people that immediately she took that on. She's like, I'm spending an hour with them at least 3 to 5 times a week. So I'm going to make them my core advocates. And then she had actually a campaign that on the first, I don't know, let's say it's like 1 week into the month, she let them all know, well, here's what happened in our community last month. And it was all conversational, but she did it in a very systematic. She was very systematic about everything that she did. And so she knew Monday, the 6th of February, she was going to have a conversation about what happened in January in her community. And from that, she had business. So what I mean by that is you have a group of people in your world, family, friends is usually where we go to first. They need to know that we're real estate agents, and they also need to be on board with becoming your core advocate, so that you know if they hear somebody talking about buying or selling, they're going to say you need to talk to them. We need to find those people. And from that, you can really have probably one transaction or more from each one of those people every year. And that right there could be 20 transactions. So think of that. So those are your key relationships that you have in there. And there's a lot more that are on here. So keep those in mind. Basically ask yourself the question, who is it that, or what do I need to do to have transactions from for sale by owners? What do I need to do to have community outreach? What do I need to do, or who do I need to talk to develop key relationships? So it's the who for a lot of these items. And then of course it goes into your marketing. So we are fairly fortunate that we have so many things that we can do online that are really low cost. And I encourage you to just have an understanding of what that looks like. Also be very, very careful on how much money you spend. I'm not advocating for like Zillow leads, realtor.com leads, things like that. In fact, if you ever are looking at that, please have conversations with some agents in the office. I'm not an advocate for it. I don't think that it proves to be profitable at all. It just doesn't. Spend your money in other places. However, there are some things that you will do as time goes on, even as simple as $5 a week doing some Facebook ads.
How do you
Have a
find
question.
that, is it beneficial to put ads in like SRQ magazine, like bigger fantasy magazine? Because I saw agents doing it and a lot of them are doing it regularly. So is it profitable? What do you know about that?
So what happens when you're doing something that costs a lot, and this does have,
$100 half a page, or I think $1,500 for a whole page ad. They send me their listing because of whatever.
so in some of like the neighborhood magazines or papers of different sorts, the SRQ magazine that they put out is it every other month or is it every month? Is it quarterly? Okay, yeah,
I think it's seasonal, summer.
oh, is it? Okay. I wasn't thinking it's monthly. If you were to do something like that, that tends to be more for brand recognition versus expecting to actually have somebody call you because they saw an ad. Calling you because they see an ad usually does not happen from things that are in magazines or even like the advertisements on the soccer fields and things like that. You usually don't get a call because they saw that. You usually get the call because they've seen that, but they also saw that you had a listing in a neighborhood. They saw your signs out for open houses. They may have seen some online advertising, and it's just putting it all together that they then have in their mind basically that, oh, you're probably not necessarily using this term, but you're a top agent in the area because they're seeing your name over and over and over again. And that's where brand recognition can help. So the ad in a magazine like that, like the SRQ magazine, for those that may not have heard the question, is probably not going to get somebody picks it up and makes a phone call and calls you directly. It could happen, and it probably does if you do it for long enough, but it tends to be more that it's just coupled with all the other things that you're doing that then become brand recognition, is what we usually say. In addition to that, there's of course like the radio. People are doing podcasts nowadays, so think of that. There's this new Clubhouse. Is it Clubhouse? I just joined it. Haven't.
Do you have an invite?
Oh, I'll invite you. Yeah. Well, I say that. I don't even know if I can. If anybody wants to be on Clubhouse, text me and I'll see if I can. I would love to invite you if I got that far. Haven't quite gotten it. Had a fairly hectic week. I will investigate. Yeah, because I clicked a button and all of a sudden I was listening to stuff and I was like, oh, can they hear me? I felt like I was like an 80-year-old person that didn't know how to use internet. Anyway, so my point with that is you have the ability to add to what you're doing, not only the listings that you do, not only the phone calls that you do, not door knocking and all of that, and listings that you may have. You can start to layer it and have more brand recognition by that. Oh, Okay, Brittany, again, I'll do my best. I still don't exactly know how to do that. So I will double check and I will do my best to invite everybody if I can even do that. And if anybody starts doing it at a high level, let us know and we'll have a class about it. I really don't know what I'm doing. Oh. So apparently Leslie Rodriguez is currently the leader in how to use Clubhouse. All right. So back to the marketing things, just to kind of like put it all in perspective. A lot of times we'll have people that'll ask questions about direct mail. And so I do want to at least address the direct mail part. Now, I've had experience with this through either agents that I've worked with or what I've done personally. And the rule, and this is from other people that do what I do throughout Keller Williams are having the same kind of results. Direct mail tends to be, you need to have a farm or an area that you're going to consistently send direct mail to that is 200 people or more. So you need to have that farm of 200 people or more. And you need to be sending them something. If you are going to do direct mail, send them something at least every 4 to 6 weeks, ideally every 4 weeks. The other thing is, this is not solely just listed, just sold cards. Those are typically thrown away. Well, all of it is typically thrown away. This goes back to its added name recognition. So you can do that. Just know you may not have a single phone call or a single anything until a year later, because the results are about 2% results. And if you're sending 200 and you're doing that every single month, just understand out of those 200, you're looking at possibly 4. It could be more, kind of depends on what you're sending. And that also, you may not even get the first phone call for 8 months. But the likelihood is that you probably will have maybe 2, maybe more transactions out of doing that at the end of a year. And it's not the for sale, just listed, just sold cards. Things like market reports, asking for, I have a buyer who's looking in our neighborhood. Is there anyone thinking of selling? I'd like to talk to you. Which that one has actually worked for me. So I sent out, this is my recent, in the neighborhood that I live, I sent out 120, I want to, because it was a specific model of, or well, a specific size of home. And I sent out 127. And out of that 127, I do have somebody who will be listing probably in about a month, maybe a little bit longer. But that was, because there really are 2 people that I know that want to move into the neighborhood. And they're just waiting for that house, for a house to come on the market. So that can happen. I also had somebody who did it religiously, and he did it, I worked with him for 3 years, and he did and it was towards the end, so let's say on month 10, and he was doing, it was a little bit more than 200, but he became the resource for that. It was a condo building, and he became the resource for that condo building and did have transactions from it. But it was always basically market reports or keeping you up to date with the market. It was that type of a.
But the condo was rental or?
Well, no, it was, for the most part, it was people lived there. Yeah, you did have seasonal people, but it wasn't really like a rental environment. Yeah, and they were I want to say like $800,000 condos for the most part, up and above that and below that. So it was a little bit more upscale, but yeah, he did have it, but nothing happened for months. You just have to be committed to it. Okay, you guys kind of have a good idea of what that looks like, and utilize this list and see, circle the ones that are things that you feel are good for what your business should look like. Remember, social media can be really low cost or even free in a lot of ways. And then there's some other things here that you're able to do for free. You could do blogs for free. Social media obviously is a lot of it.
But I have to say that the social media ads,
Mm-hmm.
they are not, I mean, I had some people liking it, commenting, I followed up on all the leads because I did it for open houses. But that was like a zero return. I mean, people answer me back, thank you, I'm just looking, I'm not moving.
So social media is also long-term.
So
You
I
have
did-
to, yeah, so social media is long-term. And they're usually about 6 months out. This is what our average, this is what our analytics are telling us, that a lot of times when somebody clicks or gives you information on a social media ad, they are typically going to be close to 6 months out. Now you might have somebody that's before that, and we have, within the office, there are people doing it that have been less than that, but most of the time it's further out, and you must be consistent, and you must consistently be sending them things, whether it's text messages, calls from time to time, emails, and all of that. And you then sometimes become let's say you have 100 people from ads that you've done. It could be 3 or 4 months later that one person says, oh yeah, you sent me a house, I'd like to go and see it. And then they become your client. So it's long-term, you do
So
have
you do
to.
a monthly drip campaign on that?
Oh, I would do like weekly.
Even if they said they're just looking, they're not ready to buy.
Yeah. Zillow and realtor.com are sending me things because I have automatic just to see what they do. I get things 2 and 3 times a day a lot of times. So you got to remember, that's who you're competing with. You're not competing with Leslie as much as you are competing with Zillow. You have to have your game needs to be as good as theirs, if not better. So have that list and just go through it and see for 2021, what kinds of things can I do to build my business?
What about handwritten notes, note
Mhm.
cards? Because I've noticed that a lot of the agents do that.
Yeah.
That's what she does. She doesn't do cold calling.
Yeah.
How do you prospect people? I mean, like, do you go on, I don't know, Remind, and then start looking for the neighborhood, the people that are renting, they could possibly be new buyers?
Yes, all of that.
Right?
So the question is about handwritten notes. And yes, you could always send somebody a handwritten note. So imagine, so for a minute, and it was fading from my husband, he really liked a neighborhood that we were thinking of possibly selling and moving into. But there's a particular style home in that neighborhood. One day you might eventually see my husband. He's quite a character. He's like, forget anything else. This is all I want. And so for that, so if something like that happens, so let's say that you have a client, my husband is your client and I want this one because I like the way the garage sits like this. It has the 2 here, the 1 here. You have the certain particular entrance and it has the curved driveway. And that's what I want. Well, in this neighborhood, I don't know, there's like 7. Of course, I didn't do this because he changed his mind like an hour later. But if you had a client like that, you could very well send a personal note. I have a client who is looking for your type of model. And I was just wondering, do you or anyone in the neighborhood that has a home like yours looking to sell in the near future? So that would be something. Handwritten notes also after somebody comes to an open house, the neighbor came to the open house, they said, oh yeah, I live across the street in the yellow house. And you write them a note after coming to the open house and say, thank you for attending. If you ever need anything, here's my card. Simple. Talk to somebody on the phone. Send them a note card. Sure. That's what a lot of people do. Yep. How are you guys doing that are on Zoom? Anybody have questions at the moment? All right, let me know. You can also unmute yourself if you ever want to speak up, because like I said, it's not too many people. I think we can manage.
Right. I just had a quick question about advertising. I'm sorry. Is that too loud?
No, yeah, but that's not your fault. That's my fault. Hold on a second. Ooh, hold on. Hold on. Should have tested that before. Okay, go for go ahead.
Sorry. I was just wondering, with regard to advertising, I notice, when I go to church on Sundays that there's an ad or 2 in the church bulletin. I'm wondering if those types of ads are fruitful.
Well, I'll tell you when, so that is a little bit different than like the SRQ magazine that comes out quarterly. I would put that, well, I grew up in a very religious family, so we had our booklet and we lived by our booklet. And we would always go there before ever going anywhere else. it goes back to if you have a loyal community. It might be an organization that you belong to. It could be some type of a sorority or anything that you did before or are doing now. And a church bulletin book is something like that. that is, I would look at that a lot stronger than just a magazine that goes out to the general public. Because that's like-minded people that
Right.
all want to support each other.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, all of a sudden there was giggles. And they were like, we all need to go to church more. I would say that would be something that I don't have experience in it being what I can give you. I can't give you really any numbers on that, but I would definitely look at it, try it. They're usually not high priced ticket item, and yep. And then report back. Let me know how it goes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, any organization, getting involved in the organization and promoting yourself within an organization is a good thing from a marketing perspective, typically. But you have to weigh how much it costs and if it's something that you can afford. Okay. Let me just change this back. Guess I closed it. Oh. Hold on just a moment, guys. Sorry. It was so loud, it kind of scared me for a second, but now we have it all adjusted. Oh, there we go. So if you ever wanted to look at this, and most of you that are either on Zoom or here in the room, you may not be at the point that you need to really think about what the operating expenses are from a salaries perspective and how much it's going to cost you, the marketing that you're going to do. You may not be in a position, and if you are, you could definitely use this. But if you were to think, my expectation is that 150, we don't have the 200 as far as the marketing from the operating expenses by GCI. It doesn't have the 200 mark, but you could see if I'm expecting to make $150,000, I could very well have some salary and benefits that are, and it has what the compensation can look like. It also has listing management, general prospecting, and marketing. How much that could end up costing me in a year, depending on how much I'm looking at making. So general prospecting of $11,760 would be 7.8% of the amount that I'm making. That is these are numbers that we get. Some of you that have played around and kind of been in Command, even before Command, we had another system that it was up to you as an agent to put in the information, but they were either able to gather. And remember, we are a company of over 180,000 agents. So we had enough people that were able to give us some data as to how much are they spending on marketing, to where this is what is probably an average that you could spend if you're making $150,000. So that's how you could kind of get an idea of what that could look like. And there's also some more information when it comes to doing some education and coaching, technology, automobile, if you wanted to add that in, your insurances and all that. So it's typically not a lot when you get into like equipment, things like that. But if you notice, if you're making $2,500,000, you're probably going to spend more money in certain things. So that just gives you a little bit of a table to have an idea of, I want to have a big business. My goal is a few years from now to have a business to where I am having a net income of $1 million, $800,000, whatever that number is. Here's what it can look like. So at least I know how to build this business properly. For those of you that are into accounting, there are some examples of how to build your chart of accounts and have a profit and loss document, which again, should have, if you're treating this like a business and you're looking for the best tax incentives and tax write-offs, please have a profit and loss statement. And if you're ever thinking of buying another home in a few years and you're going to be using this income, if you have your profit and loss statements, you will be in much better shape with your accountants. They didn't like my accounting method was not best last time we bought a house. Now, let's say it is a year from now. So we're at the end of 2021, or we're getting into, let's say, September 2021. You're having 3-4 transactions a month, and you want to not stabilize and just have 20 transactions a month. You want to have 40 transactions a month the following year. Whatever that number is, you're probably going to start to look at, how can I do that and still be able to sleep at night or see my children, or, you know, go out with my family and do things. So this is giving you some ideas of what that looks like. Again, you're building your business. By the end of the year, first year in real estate, if you are looking for that big business, there is going to be someone that you're probably going to hire, whether it's part-time, a few hours a week, and that person would be an admin. So this goes over really what that can look like as you're building that business. Because what happens with us as real estate agents, we get busy. We get busy and we stop lead generating. So it's like, oh, I'm busy. I have clients that I'm going to show houses to, so I'm not going to make those phone calls today. I'm busy, so I'm not going to do some social networking to gain more clients. And when we do that, we end up slowing down, and instead of gaining and having another extra 1-2 transactions the following month, you were having 3 transactions a month. Now 2 months later, you have 1 transaction a month because you were busy. So you ride this roller coaster of business. And the idea is, if you are looking at that 5-year trajectory, is to be building a business where you have support. So this is giving you a lot of information on what that can look like. All of you on this call, I believe, are agents at this point that you're a agent on your own. Now you're on your own. You still have support from us as an office, but doing your paperwork, still something that you have to do. We may help you to make sure that you do it correctly at first, but we do want you to think of, I want this business to be blank a year from now. This is how you can start to do it. So there's a lot of information on what that can look like. I just want you to have the information. I'm not going to go deep into this, but how are you guys digesting this and understanding? Is there anyone here that, given the numbers that you gave me, and from what I'm hearing here, is there anyone that has a plan that at the end of the year, by the end of the year, that you would have some type of admin assistance? Like to have one now, right? Leslie has a few contracts in the works. Like, I need help today. Well, you're dealing with two contracts at the moment, and then you have a couple of pieces of business. You have 2 contracts at the moment, and so that's keeping you busy, and you're gaining it. You're gaining more. Well, I know you start to feel it though, right? Like, oh, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do now? And that type of thing. And some of that becomes second nature. And some of us do things a little bit faster than others. And I'm a big fan of, though, of having some admin assistance. I think it can take away some of those things that we get caught up with that takes us hours, that person, that's what they do. They can. So there are transaction coordinators, and then there's also admin support. Sometimes admin support, like a part-time administrative person, could possibly be your transaction coordinator too, but they might be the one who is doing your social media advertising. They could be the one who is helping to schedule an inspection. There's just all these little pieces that sometimes get our days caught up. And when you have 4 transactions going at any given time or more, there's quite a bit that we get bogged down with. And it's not uncommon. Real estate agents were kind of notorious for doing things at 11 o'clock at night. Well, the inspector's not answering their phone at 11 o'clock at night to make that appointment, those types of things, and you're out with clients. So you can't be out with a client trying to schedule something else that's happening or schedule showings. There's a lot that they can do. So keep those things in mind, just so that you're learning as you go. So what we want to do now that we've gone over some of these things is we're going to go over your 411, and I want you to actually write out a 411. This could be something that changes, but those of you that are here, you have something in your packet that goes over your 411. So we're going to do that. So if you were to write down, those of you that are home, and if you don't have it printed out, think of what is your dollar amount for your annual goal? What do you want that net income to be? And then of course, what does that end up being in transactions? And you may see here that we have some things on the red that is telling you, it's suggesting going to these other classes. Definitely, those are things to keep in mind. But we want to have, we're going to work on the black area for the moment. If you were to use open houses as a sole means of bringing in your business, and I'm actually going to ask those that are here, and you could in the chat put this as well, for the number of, Juliana, have you picked up a client yet from the open houses that you've worked with? It even could be in the future that you have somebody that's like, yeah, we're not ready yet, but
No,
you're
what
in
happens
talks.
is that I change my approach constantly when I'm doing. I mean, I change the strategy. Like at first I was very pushy, and then I'm like, okay, I try to strike a conversation. And I had people who came in the open house, but I talked to them before, and they wanted to meet me in person. But so it was not really from the open house. And yeah, to be honest with you, talking to Nicole and Andrea, because she was shadowing Nicole, and Nicole is the one that, I'm going to build rapport instead of asking their information. So I dropped the pushing to sign in part, and then I started to just talk to them and give my business card and this, and so it's like trying to,
So you've restarted your approach a couple of times.
I changed it based on what others are saying. So I didn't collect the stuff. But I tried to give them my card. Some of them just even picked it on their own. And I had somebody who was an investment property, and he texted me sometimes. So do you have something on the market now that is a flipper or something? I said, this right now there's not many that is like that I found, but so far nothing serious.
So far, nothing. Have you guys, do you have anybody that you're like in talks with?
I have, well, I feel like they're ghosting me lately.
That can happen. That can happen.
There's people from Illinois.
Oh,
Really,
That's
the
about
ones
it.
that I
And how-
shown around.
Andrea, how about you?
I've only
The one-
done 2 open houses.
But you just told me that you might have
Yeah,
one.
I haven't contacted them back yet. since
Oh, got to do that today.
Yeah, so I'll have to do that.
So I'm gonna give you some data overall, and when we switch our approach, I'll tell you probably, like find one and kind of stick with it. We typically are gonna have you guys had about, on average, outside of right around the holidays, have you had maybe 5 as an average people come into your open houses? That's right for you. How about for you?
Typically, like right around 3 is where I'm.
So you might be averaging 3. Okay, so let's say 3 to 5. Does that sound possible for you too? Between 3 and 5 is an average. So if we were to use, let's use the 3. So if we were to use 3, and I'm telling you this now for this part, if you were to be an agent and you just did open houses as your lead generating tactic, it tends to be about 20% of the people that you interact with at an open house become people that you continue to have conversations with. So if you did 3, and that would be, if you did 1 open house every week, that would be about 12 a month, then you'd probably have 2, maybe 3 people that you continue the conversation. That doesn't mean that ends up being a contract. That just means that these are people that have agreed to continue to have conversations with you, which it sounds like that could be about where you guys are as far as the numbers that you've done. And if I'm having a 20% return, and again, that's just with 3. If you're averaging closer to 5, which you probably will, now that we're outside the holidays, you're probably gonna have more like 5 as your average. But if you're doing 20% and you do 4 open houses with 3 as your average, you're looking at about 2, maybe 3 of them that become people that you continue the conversations with. It then out of those, it's about 20% of those end up being a client. Now, our numbers are more in this office tend to be more like 5 as your average. And so if it's 5 as my average, and then I end up having 20 people total that I interact with at open houses, then I'm looking at more like 4 who I end up having continuing conversations. And then I end up having about 1 and sometimes 2 just from open houses that end up buying or selling a house with me. So as long as my averages are closer to 5 and I'm doing 4 a month, which they could be on Saturday and Sunday, and you could do that 2 weekends and then the others. But if you end up with that, you're probably going to end up just from open houses between 1 and 2 contracts just from open houses on a monthly basis. That's not crazy. Follow-up is key, and being relevant with the information that you're sharing with them and continuing and staying relevant to them. So that alone that's why I differ from the approach that you were talking about before about they're going to call me. The thing is, there's 5 other things that they're looking at the same time, and it's almost like whoever they just think of, and they could forget about us. So consistent communication with them and respecting in who they are and how you communicate with them and trying to read that to the best of your ability is probably where you're going to have the most success. But by doing an open house every weekend, or at least 4 a month, you probably will start to have 1, possibly even 2 transactions just from open houses every month. And what was our number at the beginning when we were talking about $200,000? It's 24. You could really be around that just from open houses. Pay attention to your strategy, follow up, consistency, things like that. And you know, it's not uncommon for that you get better with your conversations that you have after time, but after a couple of months, that could be. I know you guys feel better today than you did 2 months ago. Well, you're all of 2 open houses.
Yeah. Doing 2 is just not enough. You know?
It's not enough. Okay. There's a theme there.
I have a question.
So yes, please.
Since I'm very new, like I know nothing, what exactly would I need to do to be ready to do an open house?
Aha. So that's probably more of a detailed conversation that you will be going through some other training that we have. We have Ignite starting in 2 weeks also. And one of the first things that you could do, Frank, is I'll get you and I'll help you to make sure that you have somebody to shadow to see how somebody else does an open house.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, so we can get that for this weekend and make sure that you have an open house to see how it's done, but through the shadowing and also the additional training, I think you'll be in good shape with that.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to add, if those of you that didn't see, so Brad's done a few open houses and he's at about 6 as an average. So Brad, he's William there, but he goes by Brad. You confuse us all. Yeah, so that's why I say 5, because in the office, that's about what the average seems to be. And again, now that we're done with the holidays, you might see that improve. And pay attention to the homes that you're doing open houses with. If the homes are only bringing in lower, then there might be a strategy that you can do to help bring in more people, or also do a different house. I do. I hope that it sells because we're doing a price reduction. But if not, I would take you up on that. Yeah. Thank you. But there are a lot of people that have listings too. So there are homes to be able to do open houses at. So very good. Yes, we need to sell that house, by the way. Side note. Okay, so we have that. So I gave you some numbers, and now we're looking at if that's what my numbers are, whether you're doing the open houses, core advocates, doing phone calls. I talked about that, it's about 2 to 4% phone calls. If I talk to 100 people, then I'm doing that. You could figure out how many people do I need to talk to. One of the best ways, that's the lowest number of people to talk to, is open houses. Because you talk to them and somebody likes you, and a person who likes me may ditch me because they meet Andrea and they're like, oh, she's so much nicer. That could totally happen. Or you're from Brazil, so that all of a sudden you're more important than I am. Or it could be that somebody has a connection because you have similar interests in the next person that they go to an open house. And so that person becomes their agent. All of those things happen. They do. That's why we have to have enough of the business to end up covering what our goals are. So how many appointments we need to have to get to what our goals are. So I'm going to give you some more data. As a new agent, if you've never done a listing appointment before, you're probably still going to get about half of the listings that you actually go on a listing appointment. So if you have the opportunity to go on a listing appointment, you're probably going to be at a 50-50 as a new agent. That's what the data tends to be. Now, that may not happen for the first one that you do, or the first few that you do. Maybe you do 4 appointments before you get your first. And if that's the case, then okay, then that's about 25%. But after you've done a few of them, you do get a lot better. And most of us get to the point that we're at least 50, maybe even 60% of the listing appointments that we go on that we end up getting. And of course, after a year, you're probably going to be closer to 75% of them that you're going to get. So as a new agent, you could use the 50-50, and that, if you're expecting to have, and you want to have 2 listings every month, then you're going to need to go on at least 4 appointments. If you want to have 2 or 3 transactions from buyers only, then I need to have a consultation, and that is actually higher. Even as a new agent, if you have a consultation with them and start showing them homes, you're probably going to be at about 75% of them end up with transactions. So if I wanted to have 2 transactions from buyers every month, then I could probably assume that I could do 4 and end up with 2 or 3. Very possible. So that's where these numbers come in on the monthly. And then you've got your goals as far as weekly. Well, if I want to have 2 listings this month, or the next month, or in the next 4 weeks, if I want to have 2 listings, then I need to put myself into situations and do lead generating activities that bring me at least 4 listing appointments. So if you guys were to think of what would be a goal for the month of January for a listing.
I would be happy to have my first listing of one good listing.
Okay, well, how are we going to go and get it?
What?
How are we going to go and get it? You guys on Zoom, her reaction was, what? Okay, so you want to have your first. Okay, how? She's got a big smile on her face. I don't know. Well, we've gone over some things, so throw something out there. How can we do it?
Like social media. And building up.
Social media can work.
People really help, like, when they want to sell their house.
Yeah.
And prospecting in an open house, I think is good for buyers.
It's actually for both, because a lot of times you will have neighbors that come and check it out. So think of that. Yeah. Yep, it seems to be that we naturally think that open houses are for buyers and not necessarily, especially knock on the doors of the neighbors. You know, I'm going to be doing an open house. If there's anything you need, you know, here's my card type of thing. You'd be surprised, you know. Those types of things will happen. So he had social media as one of the things, because most of us are on social media that are here. If you're on social media, there's probably somebody in your world that is going to be buying or selling in the next month, or at least the next few months, depending on how big your social media group is. So think of the people that are in your world, whether it's by having calls or text messages with friends and family, but is there somebody in your world who has had a change in their world? Maybe they have, you know, their kids are graduating high school, and so they may be downsizing. Are they they're having a child, getting married, getting divorced, any of those types of things happening with anyone that you know? Because if their world is changing, relocating, something like that, then is there something that you can you get in contact with and say, you know, hey, I'm not sure if you remember, I'm a real estate agent now. Is there something I can help you with? Yeah. You're in an apartment. Are you thinking about possibly buying? Those are things to think about, because there probably is somebody in your world. And if you're paying attention to what's happening in their world, you're fortunate enough for them to have shared a little bit, whether it's through we see a lot in social media. I mean, you see the little picture of, you know, the embryo at the doctor's office. Do they need a house? Granted, do you pounce on them? So maybe not, but they're still, especially if they're people that you know, there might be a way that you can at least remind them that you're a real estate agent, because sometimes it is as simple as that.
I read the book of one of these TV stars of the Millionaire Agent in New York. He wrote a book about it, Studied by Servant. And he set an example when he was a beginner. He was standing in the line of a coffee shop, and there was a pregnant woman behind him. And he turned around and he said, I just blurted it out. Do you need a bigger house? And she was so shocked, and she said, yes. So we got a client.
Oh, wow. He was standing there getting coffee, and he saw, well, be careful when you see a pregnant lady. Yeah. For anybody in here, don't assume that they're pregnant. Women at a certain age, that tends to be where we gain our weight. So be careful with that. Okay, so how can you do that? You've got to have some kind of a strategy. You've got to do something to get there. And if I'm spurting out some numbers to give you some ideas, all right, I'm going to do an open house every weekend for the rest of this month. I'm going to make sure when I do an open house that I'm going to knock on the doors of the neighbors of 10 other houses, let them know I'm doing an open house, invite them in, ask them, you know, are you going to be possibly selling in the near future? I know I'm probably going to have some people that come in that may be looking in the neighborhood and just this isn't the right house for them. That's one of the best scripts out there. We've had lots of success with it. You know, this house doesn't have a pool. You know, if you ever hear of anything, because, you know, there are people that are coming to these open houses that are looking for houses with pools or with one more bedroom, or this house is a little bit big, whatever, the opposite, a little bit different. And to answer Brad's question, as far as how do you find homes to use for open houses, sometimes they're posted on our Facebook page, and there might be an email that comes out. Also on the MLS, get accustomed to, there is a link to the office listings, the office active listings. If you click on that, it'll give you the list. We have, sometimes we'll have 140 houses currently on the market. Sometimes we'll have like 70. And whatever is happening with that, you could contact all of the listing agents and ask them, can I do an open house at your house? Probably text message would be one of the fastest ways to get a response. And just go through the list until somebody says yes. I've never had anybody go through the entire list and not get a single person. So this is what we're looking at doing. What am I doing this week? What am I going to do today that will help me get closer to getting a client or more, however many clients I'm looking for this month? And it might be that I do open houses. It might be doing phone calls, social media posts, or online things, because there's a lot of things to do online. There is a blank sheet in the packet. So for you to write yours out, we do these all the time. I've done these with my children. So when they wanted something that they were looking at getting, we would put it at, okay, this is what I want. I want, you know, the new computer. Well, stop dropping the computers. We probably wouldn't need as many computers. Side note, what do you need to do this month to make sure that you're going to get that, whatever it is? Vacations. I've had agents that have done it for, you know, again, going back to the kids, because it can be that simple. Well, us as agents, what are we doing to get there? And really look at it every single week. If I'm planning on having 24 transactions this year, then I need to have 2 transactions every single month. That means that I need to be doing something today to ensure that I have a client that I'm expecting to have a closing 30 days from now. And if I don't do it today, because I sat there or stood there brushing my teeth in the morning and say, you know, it's not important for my son to go to college, then that's your accepting. And if that's where you want to be or not be, and saying no to your goal, then you're saying no to your goal every morning that you don't do this. Or if you're working part-time and you're going to spend 3 days a week in your real estate business, the day that you're supposed to be doing real estate, are you going to do the things that you're supposed to do? You got to do something. You don't get there. There is not a magic pill. You're not going to get a phone call by doing nothing. You're not going to consistently get phone calls to say, oh, I want to buy a house. Oh, I want to list my house. You got to do stuff to actually make it happen. I want to make sure I answer the question. I missed it, but is this presentation on listing?
What I find it very helpful on Facebook
Mhm.
is that you go to a group that is totally not real estate related, but you are being really, really helpful. And you don't even talk about real estate just as it's necessary, but people get to start to know you, recognize your name, you're helpful, you know everybody, and it doesn't have to be related because I mean, my niche is from Hungarians, but any other group not related to Facebook, if you help enough, and sometimes you post something that, hey guys, check out this new listing, whatever you have, or my open house this weekend, sometimes, but then you post and help people, they start to recognize you and, you know, to see you. So I've learned this in my other coaching business, when I just help, and then, you know, you kind of.
You're building trust.
Yeah, and it has to be just a group, because I don't like those groups which is real estate related, because there are so many people are pushing their agenda. You just pick a group that you're passionate about. It doesn't matter if it's basketball or whatever.
Yeah.
Something that you can comment on, be helpful on, and people will see you and you're gonna get their star for the most person in the group and all those things. Yeah.
So for those of you that may not have heard Juliana online, that her comment was that, you know, being helpful online and being part of groups where you have a common interest and consistently be adding value to that group is how you can start to build trust.
Yeah,
and with people.
Be much, because you can do one next to
Yeah.
groups that really like you. You like, okay, I like this, and I can talk about this and be helpful in there. Mine was parenting and the Hungarians.
Whoops.
There's
it
this
again.
realtor that lives in my community, and she's kind of branded herself as the community realtor, you know? And
Sorry, guys, I did that twice now.
so she created a Facebook page where she's like the admin, you know, in the Facebook page, and it's like, moving to Lakewood Ranch, Sarasota. You know, so all these people that are moving, you know, they're finding her page, and so she has like 1,000 followers on this page,
Mhm.
where she provides info about, you know, moving to, relocating to, you know. So that's I think that's kind of where she's built her self.
But those
So
people
let-
are very protective. They check you out if you're an agent, and they don't let you in.
So let me repeat what Leslie said.
When I saw that she created
Sarasota, moving to Florida, all kinds of groups. There are so many others.
So let me just repeat, because I know you guys aren't able to hear when in the room, that there are some groups that have been started by real estate agents, which is giving you the idea to start a group yourself, where it's like, you know, moving to Lakewood Ranch or any of those types of ideas. So you could start your own group. And there are a ton of a lot of these groups that you may already belong to or are thinking of starting, they probably already exist. Don't worry about what other people are doing. I have joined many groups that die 6 months later because they don't maintain them and keep them up. If you have a passion, Hungarian, Juliana is Hungarian. I don't know if you can really do military stuff because some of that stuff you're not really sharing. I don't know. There's probably a group, military moms. I don't know. Okay, I'm just gonna throw military moms. Do it. Lakewood Ranch, military moms of Lakewood Ranch. There you go. Do that. Nobody else is a military mom, right? Or you'll have to compete with them. My point, but the thing is, you can belong to so many of those groups. And Juliana also said that, which is very true, that they are asking, no, you don't want to have other agents on those groups. But I'm not worried about other agents. Remember, there's a lot of agents that don't do a great job. Don't worry about them. Worry about yourself. Create a group, make it better, and move forward.
Also, it is always like what I found when I was doing coaching, it's always easier to get a subject and join a group with thousands of people than start your own, because you already have the audience right there. You're in it and you can start building by.
But you can build your own too.
You can do that.
You can
but
build your
it's
own.
a lot longer and using others' audience that is not related, but you still.
But don't poach people though.
No, it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
coaching. I'm talking about groups that is like general.
Oh,
or
okay.
Based on the subject that you're interested in, but they have a lot of followers already, and you are helpful, and sometimes you can post some whatever information, which kind of, let's say you post about the interest rate or something helpful, and they kind of guessing, okay, and this is real estate, so they kind of in their mind, they start to contact and like connect you with real estate, because it doesn't have to be directly advertising, it could be like kind of getting in, but not.
We all know what they're doing, what
Yeah.
somebody is doing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, but not doing it in realtors groups.
Yeah.
You're doing it in general groups.
Mhm.
And that's different.
It is. Good. So there are some more pieces of information that are here in this particular packet. So you can go through these and start to understand. Now, these are going to be your numbers. And I threw out some things where, okay, if you're doing your listing appointments and you're probably going to get 50% of them, half the ones that you go on, that you get to the point that you have the appointment, that's when you're at about the 50-50. This isn't the how many calls do I need to make, how many people do I need to meet to get a listing appointment. That's going to be different depending on the activity that you're doing. But once you get to, I'm going to go and talk to this person about listing their house, that number is probably about 50-50 that you're going to get it, as long as you go in and you're prepared. And to help with the other question that was on there, there is in Command a listing presentation. There's also tons of them that are online you could definitely pull, but a very straightforward listing presentation that is already made for you, Keller Williams, it has all the Keller Williams information and it's current, is already in Command for you. So you could definitely go ahead and do that part. Would be, you know, you could basically make sure your name is on it and that there isn't something that you want to change because it just doesn't sound good to you. Do that and then you have it. You can have it, send it electronically. I hated printing things, and this was a long time ago when I first started. I hated actually taking papers. So I did it, I've always done it either with my laptop or I have a large iPad, and that's what I would do now, is use a large iPad and I flip through it. It looks beautiful and there's no paper.
What is the minimum page you recommend for that? Because I know the sample is very long.
Yeah, it's about 40 pages.
Yeah, I would not use that.
So I would say as a minimum, not counting your comps for the property, probably around 12, maybe 15 to keep your presentation to. Now, if you go and you're, as time goes on, first work on one that is about 12, 15 pages, which is all the basics that are already there. Just keep the ones that you like and then use that as your listing presentation. And as time goes on, you might then do a second listing presentation document that is a little bit more detailed. And the reason that I say you're probably going to have one to three different presentations, sometimes you're going to be working with somebody that's super detailed, that is so analytical that you may want to have, instead of 12, you might want to have 20 pages for that type of person. And so I would say, get the one, so have your basic, and then have the one that has just more of that data stuff, because there are some pages on there that talk about, here's where buyers come from, here's what the stats are on XYZ. Add some of those onto it, so that if you are going to be meeting with somebody, and let's say they tell you that, oh yeah, I'm an accountant, they're going to be more data driven. And so if somebody told me that they were an accountant, I would probably bring some of those extra pages with me, because that's the language that they speak. They like that stuff. They're data driven. So that might be something that you keep in mind. Yeah. And so you have a couple of them, so that anytime you're talking to somebody, it's a little bit more appropriate for who they are. And you'll learn that kind of stuff. Okay. So again, there's more of the details of the things that we've already gone through. You're going to learn your own numbers. You might be a person that, you might be like at 90% of the list, by the end of the year, if you go on 10 listings, you might get 9 of them, or you might get 8 of them, and then you're at 80%. So it's whatever your numbers are. So so for the next about 10 minutes, I want you guys to think of, how many people am I going to be speaking to this year? And this might be rough, but I've given you some information on what it is that we're going to be doing. So as far as my database, how many people do I need to have in my database to get to the goal of $100,000, $200,000? I use the example, if I did open houses, I could have 24 transactions just from open houses, one a week. So that would probably be 20, 200, 240 people from open houses would probably get me to that goal. Did I do that right? Did I get that right?
Sounds right.
5. Yeah.
1 a week.
Yeah. I always have to double check myself. Like, that sounds right. So this is really just for you to have an idea, and you can go back and fill some of this in. If you have just started, like Frank was talking, he's new, he's probably our newest agent that's on here. Not even completely sure on what my sources are going to be. If you don't know, I would say open houses are one of the things to put on there. If you are already on social media and you're new and you still don't know what to be using, I'd say social media would probably be one to put as my, and that might be my future, because you haven't really started yet, lead sources. It is. Totally agree. Consistency is what they're struggling with. Okay, we'll just jot some stuff down, and this is what our plan is. And then we start to get that, you're telling me, like Brad put it out there, that he wants $200,000. So poor Brad, he now has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, 9 people that will be like, how's that 200,000 going? Every time they see Brad. Right? Do you have your 2 transactions? There's something to be said when you have, that's what our top agents in the office do, is when we have some of those masterminds for top agents, that it may be something that isn't necessarily open to the public, but those are the kind of conversations that we have. Is, I know what some of our top agents' goals are. So I'm able to kind of say, well, that's really, that's close to, you have these 3 new listings and you have this going on, or you start to see some stuff. It's like, that's pretty cool how you're getting close to your goal. It's nice. And we have a number of our top agents that met their goal last year, even with 2020. That's pretty cool, right?
I'll be okay with 10 transactions in a year, but then it might change once I get a first contract or something. I don't know.
Well, we want not only what we'd be happy with, we really want part of this exercise is really to start to understand, it's like, okay, am I able to do one open house every weekend? Well, probably. And so if I am doing that and I do it well, because as time goes on, you're getting better with your conversations and all of that's happening. So yeah, after I do 4 or 5 of them, probably going to pick up a couple of clients. Because you will have better conversations. That's part of it. Sometimes, a lot of times we are lucky enough that, we do, like, let's say 3 open houses and there's somebody who then comes our way. That does happen. But sometimes it takes that we have to do a few, because then all of a sudden you start to analyze that first open house that you did. It's like, oh my gosh, I could have absolutely helped that person, but I didn't ask that question, or I didn't do whatever. That happens. How we have to learn and move forward. So we've got some other things that are on here, and this is where it's talking about that follow-up and the campaigns. And if you notice, there's some information that talks about, like, the 36 to convert touch campaign. And somebody that's here in the class asked, or was thinking about, like, a once a month. We have found that bigger successes come to actually 36 interactions, calls, text messages, social media, if you are ever to mail anything, all of those things. The magic number is 36 to have the best conversion, to where we end up with a closing from that database. And it sounds like a lot, but in some way it's not all that much. And if you haven't done this yet, I do encourage you, put yourself on a drip campaign from realtor.com and Zillow. And you might have a different feeling about how much you send, when you meet somebody. They're looking for a house. I'm telling you, Zillow's sending them stuff every day, a few times a day, probably. And otherwise, they're going to click on something on Zillow. If we haven't made enough of an impact and being able to help them, they're probably going to click on a property, and they may click on something that they want to see that property, and some random agent who's paying $600 a month for that advertising ends up showing them a property. Yeah, Zillow sends stuff to me. Now, I'm set up on Zillow as well on realtor.com as if I'm a person looking to buy. And I'm also, and you should, if you haven't done this yet, Zillow and realtor.com, you should have an agent profile. So you can put a little note on for yourself that that's something to be doing. And it's going to take a minute. That's something that, these are the things that really take time. But once you do the first one, you can kind of copy a lot of the stuff, which is good.
It really doesn't help out with leads, though. I have created my profile, but
It can help with leads when you have listings. It doesn't necessarily help with leads for anything else, but what ends up happening is you meet someone and that person may not remember your name or anything like that. And if they start to look, because you're still going to be in their directory. And so you want to have it, and you want to have it set up so that when you do have your listing, or you do have a sale, that it's documented through, like, you guys have transactions. When those close, realtor.com and Zillow will have you as having transactions that have closed. And you do want to look for those, and then you can also do reviews and ask them for reviews and all that. So make sure you have your profile set up. So there's, again, more worksheets that are in here. We're not going to spend more time on this part. I was doing my intention, and of course, if you have questions, let me know. But this was to give you the access to the information so that you can truly build out your real plan. A lot of times we kind of like stop at okay, if I sell 24 houses, that's going to give me $200,000. And it's a little bit deeper than that, because it costs money to make money in that regard, just like everything else. And I want you to have, when you are building out your business plan, you start treating this as a business, start thinking like a business person from the beginning. So there's a lot of information that's in here that you can definitely use for yourself. And you could take this and truly turn those few pages into your business plan. It's got more information if you were to be using, if you were to hire. And then it does have some important questions. So on page 24, it asks you questions, what are my areas of mastery? You know, the things that I do really, really well, and which things do I not do as well? And if there's anything that's in the low section, think of, is there someone, when I get to the point that it's needed, is there someone that I would hire for this? Or is there someone, or is this something that will always stay with me and I just need to get better at it? And then of course it has some more information that's on there. So we're gonna take just a couple of minutes of a break. If you're on Zoom, you can do this too, but it gives you a chance to go to the restroom, get some water, anything like that. But I do want to, because it's just a natural break for the things that we're gonna go on to next. And so you guys hang out there. I'm just gonna leave Zoom on and I'm gonna silence it. So it is 11:13. So let's be back at 11:20. Should give everybody enough time. And if there's any questions that you need, you can put them in the chat, but we'll open up in a few minutes and just make sure we're covering any questions. Okay, sound good? All right.
On Facebook, you can go on, when you have a business page on Facebook, you can go on and,
We're going to start here in just a moment.
There were 9 couples that showed up. So at the time, there was like 6 people in the house, and I was talking to a few, and a few signed up. I had five couples that signed up, and then the rest I didn't. And one of them was an agent. He was there video recording to send to his client to see if they would be interested in the property, because they were mainly looking for water, access of the canal. And they're all like boaters. I mean, the people that came in, they're all boaters, and then some of them were complaining that the canal wasn't wide enough. I'm like, I mean, it's not even about the house. It's
No.
about having that access in the back.
That's
And I was
a floor.
like, wow, this
Yep.
just blows my mind.
So to that, and we'll start up, but I'm going to add to that, start learning about water and water access and whether or not, and Brad would be, Brad is a boat person, builds boats. So maybe we'll have him talk, I don't know if he knows this part of it. So when somebody is looking for a property and it's water access, there are some things that I would suggest start to learn about when it comes to, it's about open water access and what types of boats that they can have when they're in canals and things like that.
Class on that? Like,
There is, in fact, look for, and I'm on a committee with the RASM board, that there are going to be there is probably going to be one class at least about waterfront homes. But the boating thing, there might be some of that. You might have to do a little bit of investigating on your own as far as which areas will allow you to actually have a boat and how big the boat can be to actually get out to the open water.
Yeah, I've been learning a lot because of all the neighbors, they come by, I ask them questions, how big of a boat can you put in here, and how do you turn around, and can you go under the bridge? Because when it was warm, the first weekend that you did and I did, I mean, there are people going back and forth in the canal. I mean, loud music, and it seems to be such a fun place to live.
Yeah.
And then, when you look on the Nokomis, I was not very familiar with the Nokomis area. Where this house is Donner Drive. The houses, I mean, they sell for $400,000, but this one is listed in the 600s. And then I was checking on the MLS when I was there, all the homes that were for sale in that area. On the other side of the bridge, they're all in the 800s.
Well, yeah, because you don't have, because it's about the bridge.
Yeah, it's all like.
It's all about the bridge.
Bay, that takes you directly to the Gulf of Mexico. So that was pretty cool. I've been learning a lot.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna get started.
Your boat has to be smaller. You can't have,
You won't be able to pass through the bridge. Yeah. So we're gonna spend the last 35-ish minutes, maybe just slightly over that, just to finish up some of the things that we have for this morning. Samantha does this afternoon. So a couple of things that I just wanted to touch upon is we all have our own thing. We all have our natural abilities and who we are. And I encourage you to start to understand what that is that can provide value to the client that you're going to work with. So when I first started, again, I'm not as if I put myself next to somebody that's technical nowadays, I'm not as technical, but I was a pretty techie agent in comparison to a lot of other agents. So that was one of the value propositions that I had when I'd work with somebody, because I would text them faster than anybody else. And I was doing things faster than other people because I just understood the systems and was faster. So when you have the ability to do that, whatever it is, I know Brad does, he builds boats. So he probably is a person who, if they start talking about boats, he's going to have a great connection with them. I grew up with boats too. We had 3 boats at any given time. We fished, we played on boats. And so I understand a little bit about boats. If you have a natural, you've lived in a community, in an area for the past 15 years, you're probably going to have some validity if somebody is talking about you've lived in downtown Sarasota area for 15 years or all of your life or whatever that is. you're probably going to be able to speak to it in a way. I can't do that. I haven't lived and breathed, right? Breathed in the downtown Sarasota area. So if somebody talks about something that happened 5 years ago in town or a store, I'm not going to know it. And they're probably going to catch on. And if that's important to them, that they understand there's a lifestyle and all these things, and that native knowledge is, I wouldn't necessarily connect with them the same way. So you're going to have some kind of an ability. It tends to be, what is your knowledge? You've lived here for a while. If you haven't lived here for a while, you start learning a lot about the area and understanding it, because quickly, just the connection based on who you are, I've lived here all my life, is one part of it. But if you've lived here all your life and you can't help them appropriately because you don't have enough knowledge about real estate, then you have the ability to, if you learn that, you can supersede somebody else that's lived here for 20 years. So when I hear, oh, this is an agent, they've been in the area for a long time, everybody knows them. Well, are they able to get you? Are they going to go and knock on doors? Probably not. Are they going to make phone calls to circle prospect to possibly find a person who's looking to buy or sell? Probably not, because there's not that many people that do that. There are not that many people that are proactive. And so if you're the proactive person, in the long run, you could very well move into the top agent spot in an area. You really can, by knowledge that usually will overcome most objections. They really will, because it doesn't always matter. And there is also sometimes, as new agents, you might feel that, well, this person has been here forever, I don't even have a shot at it. Not at all. You could very well be the agent, because you're not a busy agent in their mind, that you're newer, that you'll have more time for them.
It's because if you are just a few steps ahead of, like in a bio knowledge, you look knowledgeable.
Correct. Yeah.
Because they don't know that.
If you know more than they, yeah.
They don't know what they don't know, but you know some more, so then you look like, oh my God, like when we had a conversation, I mean, we talked about so many things that I was really doing like 2 months ago, when I was an agent and did an open house together when you were following or something.
Yeah.
And so we were, it's like for somebody who was new when I was new, and somebody was doing it for 2 months, it was like, oh my God, they know so much compared to me, because I don't know what I don't know.
So being ahead of the consumer, yeah.
Just a little bit ahead means can make you look like you're an expert.
And some of what we're doing here in this series, as well as in Ignite, that gets you pretty far. I mean, it really can. But you have to be on the MLS every day and check and see what's happening, so that you start to see what the trends are. And this is happening in the luxury market. Instead of things selling in 30 days, now they're more like 45 days and 60 days. You're starting to see trends and things like that that are happening. When you have that kind of conversation with somebody, you're really going to show up as a knowledge holder. And giving them the here's what's next is something that is super helpful with the clients. And I mean, you guys are working with some transactions, so hopefully first couple of transactions are a little bit, it's all new, but you're probably getting to, it's like, okay, I know that this is coming. I know we talked about that it was like, okay, the appraisal is coming. I'm making sure that I'm not missing anything, those kinds of things. And so when you're able to say, okay, the appraisal is coming and it's going to be here in 5 days or whatever, which was really long. It's going to be here. Yeah, it's going to be here. And this is what we're going to look at. Hopefully it will come in at the price, those types of things. So it's the what ifs. And we went over that with inspections too. It's like, here's what can come up in an inspection. And when you do that, you do become a knowledge holder.
And also that a lot of clients, like one of my clients is a businessman dealing with $1 million of selling whatever he's selling. And he's really like bossy, like he wants to know it, he wants to be there, and it's a cash buyer, so it's a totally different transaction. But then the other client is like totally like, oh yeah, you know better, you tell me what to do, and okay, that sounds good.
So you get the two extremes.
Yeah, the two extremes. And when it's cash, when it's a transaction, so in the time frame too, and so.
Yeah. Oh, of course. So learning what to expect is going to be really important. So I have two questions for this part, and they're right here. It's step 1 and step 2. What are a couple of words that you, for yourself, would use to describe yourself? And then the second question is the words and phrases that others would use to describe you. You could ask if you know each other. So there's some people in the room that know each other fairly well, or have seen each other from time to time. I know my family would describe me one way. You guys would probably describe me another way. And then, neighbors probably a different way. Don't think about me, it's about you. So think of just a couple, just come up with maybe 2 and jot those down.
So what I have to write now, but others, my family can come?
What do you think, think of 2 words that would use to describe yourself. You could do this further. We just want to kind of move through some of these exercises. So what would be for 2 words that how you describe yourself, and then 2 words, if you're thinking of more, that's okay, but at least 2, and then how would somebody describe you? Just, they're adjectives. It does not have to be real estate related, but think a little bit more business related. Could still be kind and positive words like that too. Maybe even got some examples. So if you spent some years raising some children, then you probably have superior group management, conflict resolution, negotiating skills. Yeah. If you were part of a, like a treasurer for your church or an organization, impeccable integrity and financial skills. You've been in the engineering world. You may excel at implementing systems and handling details. I was in pharmaceutical management and I did a lot with the marketing department. So when I came in as a new real estate agent, I'd had over 20 years of marketing experience, which is true. I was marketing drugs, but legal drugs. But in all honesty, if you just take it out, take the thing out, a lot of times what you're doing is very transferable to real estate. So if you were to think of that, if you have been in a certain industry, and even if part of it was that you were, not working, had your own business or raising a family for the last couple of years, or for a while, any of those things that are outside of what we just kind of talked about, it could still be what your past has been. So I started buying real estate also when I was 23 years old. I was bought my first house on my own. So I was buying and selling, and I'm just using this as an example, but I was buying and selling for over 25 years when I started my real estate business. Not for over 25 years, for over 20 years. Something like that. I'm losing track of how old I am. So that was another lever. So if you've bought and sold houses for the past 15 years, that's another thing that you could add to it. So these are just a few things that we were going to add to it. And have those things to the side, because that'll start to add to your validity. When when you're talking to someone, you're able to add to that. So when I went on my first listing appointment, I did talk about the fact that I had that marketing experience, and it did not come up that, oh, how many houses have you sold? Because I came in with here's my value. Here's what I did. Now I had people in my back pocket, agents that were willing to come to my rescue if I needed them. However, because I presented myself with that validity to begin with, I was pretty fortunate. Now, I did have questions as time went on. I'd have somebody maybe ask me, well, how many houses, I'd sold 3 houses, and somebody would possibly ask about my experience. And it was of course, I was always honest and let them know, but I did have some of that other backing. So think of the things that help you when it comes to real estate. And a lot of the times that will get you over that hump. It doesn't come up as often as you may be fearful that it will of, oh, how many houses have you sold? Or how many years have you been a real estate agent? That does come up less than you might be worried that it would. And so there are a couple of things that are just listed here, just as a top note. Depending on if it's a buyer or a seller, it tends to be the sellers will sometimes look for your reputation in that area. The higher the price point tends to be the more times that that's going to come up. So just know we are a large office and we do have some top agents that are in here that do sell luxury. If you ever have an opportunity that you're talking to someone and you feel that it may be problematic or it may be that you need assistance in that to get that listing, we do have agents that would go with you on a listing appointment. I don't want you to be fearful that, oh, take away the worry that you may not be worthy to get that listing. And if you feel like you need it, we do have agents in the office that would go with you. So don't shy away from the opportunity that's in front of you. Just make a phone call, myself or Austin, and we would help you to find somebody to partner with you if that's what you felt like you needed.
Do you feel like that when you do a listing, they question it more often, how many homes you sold? Yeah.
Listings tend to be more, it also depends on the neighborhood. The more established neighborhoods may ask questions. But if you've sold in that neighborhood, you've brought the buyer, you're probably in better shape. But the thing is, don't worry about it. Just go on the appointment. You're going to get it sometimes. Sometimes they're going to care. Sometimes they're going to say, well, yeah, that's Susie. I don't like her. She's not nice. And so the person who's selling the most, they're actually looking for somebody different. And so it's not a problem that you haven't necessarily sold in that neighborhood. It just depends.
Now, when you have a listing, is it a requirement from Keller Williams to have the post signs on the yard, or can it be like the ones they just stick to the ground?
The type of sign is not a requirement from Keller Williams.
But some neighborhoods, they would.
Correct.
That kind of sign.
Yeah, Lakewood
Yeah,
Ranch,
specific.
each neighborhood, I don't know if it's each neighborhood has a different one, but there are different signs that are, it has to be that type of sign in that particular
Even
neighborhood.
the gated ones, they have that requirement. I find that from friends.
More so than anything else. Yeah, gated communities.
Well, the house that I did, the open house yesterday, I mean, it has one of those posts, the post that you hire someone to come
Yeah.
in and take the ground. But that's not a gated community. It's just.
Well, I think that's just her signs. Like those are the signs that I use. Yeah, but if I have a listing in Lakewood Ranch, there are many of the communities, it's a little green. It's like a very small sign in comparison. You have to have that type of sign.
Oh.
We have a visitor standing at the window. So these are just things to keep in mind. It tends to be, I'm going to simplify it and make it a little general, and I don't really like generalizing people, but I guess I'm going to do it anyway. Buyers tend to want somebody that's going to take care of them. It has less to be about how many homes that you've sold. They want you to help them. They want to feel that you're helpful. So you're being compassionate, being patient, having a warmth to you is probably going to get you further when it comes to a buyer. Sales side, they're going to look a little bit more for that, again, being general. They do want to be taken care of, but they also want things to be done. They want the most amount of money for their house. So if they don't see a little bit of that edge to you and a little bit of that salesperson, not the sleazy salesperson, the professional salesperson that understands marketing and all those other things, So they might look for that kind of type A personality to kind of come forward, is probably going to be more looked for with a seller. So keep those things in mind. And there's a lot that's on here. We've done this. This is like within the last 2 years, and it's really stayed pretty consistent. Now, something that is also on here that you may not, you may think should be higher or would be higher, the amount of money that we make as agents outside of the for sale by owner, but if they're looking to list, the amount of commission is not as high as how fast and how much money are they going to make. That tends to be lower on the scale. So like right here, it's saying this agent commission is 4%. So out of all the people that they talk to, and like I said, I think this was maybe a survey that's about 2 years old. It's not as high as you would think. So as a homework assignment, this is something for you to do on your own, is how you describe yourself and what is your resume and what do you know, to help with those questions when you are talking to buyers and sellers. These are questions that whether you've been with us for, I know there's somebody on here that's only been with us for a couple of weeks or been with us for a couple of months or a few years, understand the answers to these questions and put yourself in as positive of a light. We do not lie, but put yourself in as positive of a light as possible. So what are the jobs that you've had in the past? Don't lie about it, but you know how we talked about, like group organization or something like that when it comes to raising children. Those are true skill sets that you have. I had one, so as a blended family, now that we have others, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so much harder. So much harder to have more than one child. Yeah, but the point is just to answer these questions for yourself, and how can it be something that is parallel to real estate careers. So that's an exercise for you to do for yourself. And then of course, how is it relevant to real estate so that you can combine the two? So if somebody were to ask the question, and again, I'm going to use myself as an example, if they were to say, well, how much real estate experience do you have? And I was in my first year. Well, I had 20 years of marketing, and I've been buying and selling properties for over, and I'm going to say 15 years, I forget. However, I've been buying and selling properties for 15 years. So those two things kind of took away a lot of the, she doesn't know what she's doing. It helped. It helped. Not perfect, but it helped. Because it's like, yeah, well, I had.
Because I see most people, their first listing is from a friend or family, somebody to give them a chance.
Yeah.
Okay, do that, let's do that, and then we'll see how it goes kind of way.
But it might be somebody that you get from an open house. We've had a couple in the last like 6 months that they did 2 or 3 open houses. So within their first few open houses, and they got a listing. It does happen.
From circle prospecting or?
No, from doing open house. Yeah, it could be from circle prospecting too, though. I'm just gonna push this out there. It's not asked as often as you may think of how many houses have you sold or how long have you been in business. It really doesn't. When you are a knowledge holder and you're able to be one step ahead of them, like you said, or your conversation is that you know what you're talking about, it doesn't come up that much. It will come up if you get to the point when it's stumbling blocks, and these are kind of easy questions. That could be the case.
And the buyer's agent, I think I had only 1 or 2 who asked me. Those were like online lead, one of them. She asked me how long I've been doing it. But most the 2 when I was closing, right? I mean, I have a contract with them, they never asked me.
Yeah.
And they were doing, even a businessman, he never asked me, so what's your statistics?
Right. It doesn't come up as often. Once in a while, somebody's going to ask you, and you're going to be like, 2 years from now, and you're like, really? Why are you asking me this now? But probably because you said something that made them question it, and it's not anything bad. It's just a matter of they had a thought when you answered that question. So adding these things all together, these are things for you to think of and just go through so that you feel really comfortable with how you can help people. Because those conversations are super important when you're at open houses, you're talking to somebody on the phone, a friend recommends you to help them buy or sell. And because you're really comfortable with the things that help you as a real estate agent in your experience, you're probably going to come across as more of a professional and just get you further. It really will. To answer your question, Derek, yes, that's going on, but for you, oh, actually, I'm sorry, that was Brittany. I do have my Q&A, but if you're in this class, stay in this class. If you need anything from me, you can call me later. Okay. So start to collect what people are saying, and also you can start to have some reviews and some recommendations by people that you've worked with in the past. And if nothing else, you are able to get that from on like LinkedIn. LinkedIn will allow anybody to do a recommendation for you and start to get some validity so that you can use that. If you were to show up at a listing appointment, you could actually have a page of reviews, which in the presentation, in your listing presentation, there is a page that you could have a few people who have said really good things about you. Now, have it all true, don't make up one, but somebody that you may have done business with in the past that could write something up with you. And it doesn't have to be real estate related. It could be any of the other stuff. I have some recommendations on LinkedIn that are from when I was in pharmaceuticals, and it doesn't matter. It was still a matter of my professionalism and helping people. And that's very relevant. So that's some of the things that you can do. But anytime that you do have a transaction, if you can, look at getting them to recommend you on some of the big sites, realtor.com. So as much as we don't like those sites, that's where people look. And then of course, collect them. If you have a Facebook page or your own website, however it is that you want to do it, that's a good place too. But those are things that they have to do. You can't copy and paste, which you can copy and paste when it comes to like your own website. Let's talking about those testimonials. All right, so how are you guys doing? Do you have any other questions at the moment? I want you to feel strong about sit down at a listing presentation and, you know, bam, here's why you can hire me. So those questions are one of the ways that you can build that answer to that question. Now, the other thing that has a lot of this information, you could definitely read through this, but what I want us to spend just a couple of minutes on is real estate is a local business, as it says on the side. And to, there's a couple of questions here, and I just want you to kind of think about them. Your quick answer, your basic answer, how is it that you give great customer service? And so it might be that you have that idea of like the white glove treatment. It could be that you are very diligent and very analytical and detail oriented, those types of things. So therefore your customer will always have everything that they need, you know, those types of things. So think of a couple of things when it comes to your customer service on how that defines you. You will have your value proposition. So the value proposition, some of the things that we were just talking about will turn into a 1, 2, 3 sentences top, more like a 1 or 2 sentence. What's your value proposition? So is it that you're a very techie, I feel like that's such an old term now, but you know, as a local agent, I've lived here all of my life, and when it comes to these neighborhoods, I'm able to help you find the home that you're looking for to live the next 20 years of your life. I don't know, it could be something. Like, what are you going to do at 20 years? That probably wasn't very good. It's like, you only live for 20 years. Yeah, it's your elevator pitch. Yeah, your value proposition. Elevator pitch is the concise one. The value proposition can be a little bit bigger. But you need to know, you're in front of your perfect client. You want to sell waterfront homes. You want to sell, I want to sell to first-time home buyers because I just love the idea of somebody buying a house. They're so excited, and it's just it is. I will say, first-time home buyers are a lot of fun. If that's your world, well, okay, that's your ideal customer. How do you answer their needs? And what is the value proposition that you can? You're in an elevator, you're standing in front of them, you're at the grocery store buying bananas, and you're able to give them your little spiel of to why they should hire you as your real estate agent. And then, of course, your unique sales proposition. So that's like, what is your validity? Why you? So this is just giving you some more data again about what the buyers want and what the sellers want. So again, this is just kind of like your information. If you are new to negotiating, please work on being better, because that will help you tremendously now. We are in a seller's market right now. If and when, it will change, but does it change drastically? Your negotiation skills, whether you're working for the buyer or you're working for the seller, are things that can truly help you as time goes on. So a buyer has multiple offers. I mean, we've had that situation where we put together offers to try to be as strategic as possible. One didn't work and then one did, right? Did they only do two?
Just two.
Yeah, they just two.
That's the only one.
Okay, but you won the second one.
I wish I would've won the first one.
I know, we lost the first one.
It's the seller's market, but in both of my contracts, I negotiated the price down, 120,000,
Yeah.
110,000.
Exactly.
But they were different price point though.
Yeah,
And 30,000 was never sold that low in that neighborhood even in the past, you know.
so that's a great negotiating. So you're negotiating and start to learn what your numbers are, whether you're working with the buyer or the seller, so that you can start to say that. That's something that can add to your unique selling proposition, where you can say, well, in the last year, even though you've only been an agent for 6 months, in the last year, my sales price to my list price to sales price ratio is, I've actually saved on average my buyers blank thousands of dollars or percentage. Same thing with this on the seller side, that I'm selling at 99% of list price. All of those things. So that's how you can add validity to who you are. Now, you know, maybe that you have had 4 sales in the last.
But tell you the truth, I don't have experience much of negotiating, and I'm not like an expert on it.
But you did well with 2 so far.
I saw it on TV.
So you're
I
learning.
go and get on those
You're
shows.
learning.
That's how I did it.
Yep. So this is asking you some other questions. So this is all just to get this all honed in and to find out what the services are that you offer. So this is, again, asking you some questions so that you really do have that ability to sit in front of a client, talk on the phone to a client, and be very, very clear on how you can help them. Because we don't want you to sit there with that. And it could very well be that you're in front of someone who buys and sells 2 and 3 properties a year. I want you to have the ability to win that client. And by getting yourself set up so that you can deliver what you can do for them is going to put you in a much better position. So answering these questions, what services do you offer? There's 10 questions that are here, making sure that you're clear on that. And then it gives you an exercise to do. So this is another thing to do as far as your homework to be able to do.
And the other thing is what I did, I'm always searching outside of their preference,
Mm-hmm.
because
Oh.
one that is coming down in April and the one that is in downtown, I found them to have both outside of their search criteria, search neighborhood search. So I find a home that I really like, but it was not in the neighborhood that they were saying, okay, we're gonna look there. So I always go out and kind of presented it like, you might be interested in this because look at this is so cool and blah, blah, blah. So they get interested, they look at it and they really like it, even though it was outside of the search area that they wanted.
Yeah. Well, and because you have knowledge, you were able to give them more of that information.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
This is working with sellers.
We have a question about sellers.
When you're in a multiple offer situation and things are like, you know, I'm sure they're looking to you for advice on which might be a better offer,
Mhm.
you know, to take. How do you educate yourself? I guess, things are new, how would I even know to advise them? You know what I'm saying?
Well, to advise them on buying
On which offer they might or maybe should take. I know ultimately it's their decision.
on the sale side.
Yeah.
So on, well, the first time that you have as a listing and you have to transfer, the question is like, how do you even advise somebody if you have a listing and you have multiple offers coming in? First of all, you're not alone. If you need help with that, there's those of us that can help you. I can help you, as well as we have some top agents that, that's one of the things that some of the top agents that are part of our ALC would be happy to help you with too. It's about price and terms. And when it comes down to it, this is what you're going to make on this one. And this is the things, the obstacles that could be problematic. The inspection period of time is too long. The inspection amount of money that they're willing to give up is too much. Those types of things. So you just have to identify it. And there actually is a spreadsheet for you to list like the pros and cons. And it comes down to, it's the seller's decision. Yeah, it really is the seller's decision. So I'm gonna share. Whoops. I'm gonna share the last little section. How to educate yourself. Negotiating? Oh, there is a negotiating certificate or not certificate. There's a negotiating, not certificate. What's the other thing? Designation. Yeah, there is. RASM has one.
It's like a class if you pay and they give you a diploma or whatever.
They will. Yeah.
Which is the abbreviation that some realtors have after their name. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, there we go. Ah, did it again. Why did I do that? Hold on a second, guys. So lastly, just to kind of like clean up everything, it's a few pages in or past where we just were. It's the accountability section. There we go. So it's like page 19 and it's, yeah, it's page 19 of the time management with the 411. So let me. So just to kind of like finish this part up. So we've gone over how to put together your goals. Now my question is, how are you going to get there? I mean, it's easy for us to say, I want to have blank. I want to have this much money. I want to have this many transactions. What makes you make that happen? What is the accountability that makes that happen? So some of us, it might be that we share that information with our significant others, friends, family. It could be here in the office that you have, you know, everybody knows what Leslie's goal is going to be. And so every time we see her, she might run from us, but every time we see her, it's like, okay, how's that? You know, it's January. You really wanted to have blank happen. How's that going along? Sometimes that works. Sometimes it's a matter of putting it on a piece of paper. And then of course there is, you know, one of my jobs is to understand what your goals are and to help you with, if that's what you tell me, I want to make sure that we have as many avenues to get you there as possible. So if you're telling me that you want to have 2, if you're telling me that you want to have 4 transactions by the end of February, the steps that we're doing today will get you there, because that can happen. You could have 4 transactions by the end of February. That can happen. Got to do things today, tomorrow, next week to make sure that part happens. So I encourage you, and I'd love to know what everybody has and wants as their goal. You can also in command put your goal in as far as your dollar amount, and it'll help you calculate as far as your transactions and the people that you have in your database and what that can actually equal, because there are some formulas. So the number of people in your database, and if you multiply or multiply that times 0.05, like 5%, that's actually, by systematically communicating with them, you will end up having that many transactions. Now, if you never talk to them, you're not going to have any transactions. But if you systematically, in that 36 touch that we talked about, if you do those things, then the average agent is ending up with a 0.0, so basically 5% of whatever is in their database. So if you have 200 people in your database, then you're looking at possibly 10 transactions by systematically communicating with those 200 people. So in the last part of this is kind of giving you some and reminding you of some of that information. You know, the categories of us as agents are going to be: how many leads do you have? How many listings do you have? The contracts that you write, because sometimes something falls through, it will happen. So when we get very attached to, we have this one transaction or we have these two transactions, if our goal is that we want to have 2 transactions, then in theory, we should have an extra transactions to make sure if something falls through, because it does happen, that we still have what our goal is. So you got to start to know how many contracts do I need to have, the amount of money that I need to have if I am going to be spending money in marketing, and also being really clear with what my monetary goal is as well. Are there people that I need? Do I need a transaction coordinator? The systems and tools and the education. And that's not just, you know, myself standing up here. Austin does things in the office. There's other people in the office that do things. There are things at the board. If you go to RASM, there are things that are there that you can be learning to advance yourself. There's quite a bit. So make sure that you have what those goals are, and that you're really having accountability surrounding them. What happens if you don't do what you want to do? You don't get what you want, yeah. So if I have my goal is $200,000, is there anything that's going to happen if I only make 180? How do we feel if we only make 180, if our goal is 200? Yeah. There's other agents that make 200. And that may not be your goal. Well, what if, even if my goal, you know, I'll just say that there's agents in the office that really just want to sell a few houses a year. So maybe their goal is $50,000. Well, is it okay if we only sell 40? And understand what your bottom line is, because sometimes, and if I've sat with you and I may have asked you this question, where you might tell me, okay, $100,000, $200,000. And then I will ask the same thing. Well, what happens if it's 180? And if you're like, well, that's not bad. Okay, so really what you're telling me is you'd feel pretty good if you had 180. It's like, well, how about 160? Oh, that's probably better than most agents. Yeah, it actually is. You feel pretty good about 160? Yeah, 160 would be okay. So you're no longer working on a $200,000 goal. Now you've already bumped yourself, because you threw away $40,000 easily just from us having a conversation. And you could do that at any number, but you got to find out, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that if I'm spending 40 plus hours a week doing this, and I'm only making whatever that bottom line is, yeah, I don't like that at all. Okay, then that's probably your bottom line. But you got to find out what your threshold is, and then start to be accountable to that. Because what does happen if you miss? You're planning on talking to 20 people every day. Well, tomorrow you don't talk to 20 people. We're not talking about, I mean, you're taking some classes right now, so this week. What about next Monday? I'm going to talk to 20 people every day this week. make sure I talk to 100 people this week. Are we okay with not? And we talked about consistency before. So I'm going to leave you with one part. And there's a lot more information that's in this. I just want to make sure that I ended with the accountability process. There was an agent that I was working with, and she was a physical trainer, so she would work with other people. So I have to say she was pretty diligent to begin with. And her commitment was that she was going to talk to 20 people every day for 5 days a week. So 100 people every week. It was like 10:30 at night. I forget exactly, but let's say it was 10:30 at night. And she was going back to her information. She just kind of, something came up. I don't know. She had to do something else. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm short. And she was short 2 people. So here it is, 10 something at night. She's short 2 people. She went to Publix or Walmart or something like that, whatever it was that was open. So it was late at night. She goes to the grocery store. Now this is a trainer. So when she tells the story, it was just kind of funny because she was like, so I was like buying pork chops and like all of this bad food that I don't even eat because all I was doing was roaming the store to make sure that I talked to 2 more people. And the thing is, from that, she was so committed to talking to 20 people. The likelihood of finding 2 people in the grocery store and having any of them want to buy or sell was low, the probability of that happening. But she knew if she talked to enough people, she would meet her goals. And I want to ask you to start to have that kind of a commitment to where I'm going to do this because I know this is going to help me get that. And if you're that committed, you probably are going to find business in other ways. It could be at the store at 10 o'clock at night, but it's probably just because you're doing what you're supposed to do that you're going to get there. You will. And I am fortunate, I'm still on their Facebook page of that office, and she is consistently in the top 3. You know how we do the reports? She sells a lot of houses. And that was less than 6 years ago.
Now, when you say talking to people, you're talking about selling.
Well, yeah, you need to have a conversation at some point, whether the question, we say that the script is, do you know anybody, you or somebody you know is looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? So that's the question. How you ask it becomes, it's more conversational than that. So you're at the grocery store buying the bananas. And I know I talk about the grocery store a lot, but we all go to the grocery store for the most part. It's just that common denominator. So when you're talking to someone, it comes up. It's like, oh yeah, you live around here. I just moved into the neighborhood, or it can be anything. It can be anything. And that's not natural for me. I'm not the person that like sees somebody with an awesome purse, and I don't naturally do that with people that I don't know. But when I was building my real estate business and that was my focus and not, training with you guys, I did that because I was very committed to that other goal. But I'm not naturally the person that does that. Now it's funny when I am at the store and somebody says something, it's like, oh, do you like that? Like cereal or whatever. It's like, oh, have you ever tried that? Be that person. Sometimes people talk to you, sometimes they won't.
And by the way, you know,
Okay, you just have a couple of sentences in. But the people that like to talk tend to start talking. If they don't, and then they walk the other way and they like look at you with the weird eyes and just keep walking, then okay, that's probably not your clientele. But the other one, I know. Okay, guys, do you have any other question? I want us to end here. There's lots of information here, but I wanted you to feel really comfortable with knowing what you need to do, putting together your business plan. I would love to sit with each one of you and make sure that we have that in place and that we are on target to get those things done. And that's all that I have at the moment. But any questions? I see something. Oh, thank you, Britt. So there's a negotiation class and there's a discount on the MyRasm. So, so I'm going to,
When is the
Save chat. I do not know when it is. I saved that chat, so I have it. Thank you, Carrie. So Sam will be back in here shortly. So I'm going to log off of this part and we will log back on right before 1 o'clock for Sam to do her part. So you have your lunch break.
So she's
Okay.
coming at 1.
She'll come back at 1. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Susie.
You're welcome.
So we're getting the different package then because she's talking about technology.
Yeah, I don't know if she actually has like an actual package.
This is very informative. Thank you.
Oh, good. You're welcome.
Is there a package for this presentation?
There is, and I'll make sure that you get that emailed to you too. It's in the chat box, but I'll make sure it gets sent out as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to end that.